All right, we'll call this general committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here on this sunny evening. We start our meeting with the following land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. We'll now take 30 seconds to reflect. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem. The Council for the City of Peterborough recognizes the principles contained in our Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All right, before we continue, Mr. Clerk, did you want to make some comments?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wish to introduce the most recent member of the Clerk's Office team, Mr. Colton Ambrosio, who was the successful candidate for the Clerk and Council Support Specialist position. Mr. Chair, just in conversation with our CAO, Commissioner Potts, and the Mayor's Office, an existing position that was vacant was updated to include some support for members of council, including such things as assistance with maybe expense reports or booking of conferences. Again, Mr. Chair, Colton Ambrosio was the successful candidate. I just ask him to please stand up.
And welcome. Great to have you on the team. Adoption of minutes, April 22nd and April 28th. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Degay. Any comments or questions, errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. And Mayor Leal will be a yay. And that is carried. Mr. Clerk, any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening?
Mr. Chair, I have His Worship and I have Councillor Burke.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll declare a declaration on item 13A, the Integrity Commissioner Jory report, as one of the remedies and options in the report would be a suspension of pay for 90 days. So from that perspective, as I said, I will declare, and I will recuse myself from this chamber when that item was being discussed.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leal. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest for 13F. My studio is in the address there, and I rent from the owner of the building. So that's the reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Sounds good. Okay, we have one item coming out of closed session this evening, property. that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSRS 25-007 dated June 2nd, 2025 of the Commissioner of Legislative Service as follows. That respecting 2350 Woodglade Boulevard, staff be authorized to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSRS 25-007 dated June 2nd, 2025 of the Commissioner, Legislative Services. Moved by Councillor Hakey. Comments or questions? We'll take a vote. And Mayor Leal's a yay. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. So we'll move to our consent agenda. Committee members, let me know if you'd like to speak to any of the following items. 13A, Integrity Commissioner Joint Inquiry Report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? I have Councillor Baldwin and Councillor Reel. 13B, Social Services Reserves for Modular Wind Down. Anyone wishing to speak to that? I have Councillor Burke. 13C, Parks Levy Funds Transfer. Anyone wishing to speak to that? I have Councillor Lachika. 13D, Budget Increase Request and Contract Amendment for Woodland Drive and Water Street Intersection Improvements. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 13E, Designation of 1310 Albertus Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing Councillor Akey. 13F, I know Councillor Burke has declared on Hunter Street West, but anyone, Councillor Lachika? And 13D, designation of 64 Walkerfield Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Hakey. So up for consent this evening, just one, 13D, moved by Councillor Parnell. We'll take a vote. And Mayor Leal's a yay. And that is carried. All right, so we have two presentations this evening. Our first one at 12A, Sanitary Master Plan. And we have Mr. James Jorgensen from GEI, and as well as Laura Fergali. Apologies if I've mispronounced both your names, from GEI, so apologies, but welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here this evening.
Chair, I'd like to say good afternoon, good evening to everybody here, to city staff, to councillors and to the public. Thank you very much for having me to talk about this important project. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a summary of this project that we've been working on with city staff for the last year and a half or so. So a lot of detail and information in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So we'll try and cut to the good stuff. This is the sanitary sewer master plan that we've been doing for the city. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about the project, the history, what we've done through that, and then obviously the key outcomes and recommendations from the project. The project itself is a Class EA process project, so it's under the Municipal Class Environmental Assessment framework. Through this, we are satisfying phase 1 and 2 of the approach, which essentially means we have to identify what the issues are and then go through a series of alternatives and evaluate them before selecting a preferred approach. And that's really the process that we're going to walk through today in terms of showing you how we went through that, identified the issues, looked at the alternatives, and selected a preferred. Brief timeline of the project. So it started a fair while ago, but the key pieces here, about a year ago in May last year, was our first public information center. So through the process, there is a requirement to have points of contact with the public. The first one was around a year ago. At that time, that's when we present the main problem and opportunity statement, which really relates to growth and what the anticipated impacts of that growth on the city's sanitary sewer system will be. And then February this year, we had our second public information center. So back in February, that's when we're presenting what we believe to be our preferred strategy. So we've gone through the evaluation. We are leaning towards a preferred approach to service this growth. And then we present that to public. And as we work through confirming those details, we find ourselves where we are today, which is June, presenting here to committee before we eventually follow up with a 30-day public review period following our notice of completion of the project. The problem and opportunity statement, this is a growth-driven master plan. So the main intent of this project is to understand what needs to be done to service the forecasted growth in the city of Peterborough out to 2051. So all of the existing issues, whilst they're relevant and important, aren't the key focus. It really is focused in on identifying what needs to be done to deal with the extra 40,000+ people that are projected to come and live in the community by 2051. This is all in alignment with the city's official plan, and the numbers are the same numbers that are presented in that plan. We are also trying to support the official plan framework objectives. There's a few of them noted there about this plan being transparent, sustainable, reliable, environmentally friendly, cost-effective, flexible, and importantly, we are trying to maximize the use of the existing infrastructure that we've got. So where we don't have to build or propose to build new stuff, we're not going to. The map that you can see on the slide as well is the study area. So you can see the boundary. It's essentially the city extent. It does include the landfill area, which isn't massively relevant to the sanitary system, but is included in then what is important as well as the airport is encompassed within this area. This is a map showing the locations of the planned growth. So this is a parcel layer traffic survey zone fabric showing where those 40,000+ people are expected to turn up. The entire extent of each of the areas that you see isn't planned to be fully developed. Within each of these areas, there'll be areas that aren't appropriate for development. So it's a portion of these, but this is where the planning team at the city believe those new people are going to be coming to live. And that really does impact what the impacts on the sanitary sewer system are going to be. With that growth layered on to the city and onto the existing system, we need a way of understanding how we decide when something needs to be done to the sewer system to address and service that growth. And this is probably about as simple a way of showing it as we could come up with, but essentially what we're trying to do is for different return periods, so design storm events or rainfall events, make sure that the system, the sanitary system, is resilient and providing an adequate level of service to the community so that it doesn't surcharge a sewer, so sewers don't become overly full and at capacity. And then what's really important is the second line down around the 1 in 25-year design event, where we're trying to ensure that there is no risk of basement flooding as a result of the sanitary sewer system's capacity. We also look at a bigger storm event in terms of the 100-year and also a climate stress test event. And whilst we're not going to be recommending pipe sizing and facility sizing to accommodate those events, we do want to try and make our system as resilient as possible to those events, which is what we've done through this study. This is a map showing the existing system performance. There's a lot of detail. It's based on the outputs of the city's sanitary sewer hydraulic model. So every single pipe that's in the ground in real life in the city is digitized within this hydraulic model, which allows us to run lots of different scenarios and simulations to see what will happen for different types of storm rainfall event. When we use that to identify pipes that have an existing capacity issue, this is the resulting map that we have. So this is without any growth applied, and it shows where the system is under strain during storm events. The system generally performs well. You don't have any expected or predicted surface flooding from the sanitary sewer system during this design event, but you do see some red, especially in the downtown core and some other areas where pipes are, for this design event, showing to be at capacity. And when you put those 40,000 new people and the employment population that goes with it onto the city and look at the impacts, we've highlighted on this map a few of the key areas that are really showing to have problems when that future growth actually arrives and that load is placed on the system. The downtown core, so it's an existing issue, but it gets much worse with the impact of growth. And there's several other locations, even to the point where we're showing surface flooding if the growth turns up and you do nothing to your existing system. So the option of doing nothing to the existing system and allowing the growth projections to all arrive really isn't going to be one that's feasible or that we would ever recommend. Just a quick framework overview of how we go about identifying the potential solutions to service this growth and then how we evaluate it. So we start with a long list of all the things we could possibly do to help the system service this growth. We screen some of those out at a high level, just advantages, disadvantages. And then when we get into the strategies, we use a 5-point criteria evaluation process, which includes looking at the advantages and disadvantages of the technical, environmental, financial, legal, and societal impacts of all of our options. Using that evaluation and a scoring process, that's how we select our preferred strategy. And then we refine that strategy in terms of the siting and alignment of the various infrastructure required. And a little insight into some of the options that are available to us through the Class EA process, we always have to consider the do nothing scenario. Through our existing system analysis, that do nothing is really not a viable concept. Do nothing and allowing growth is going to be detrimental to the operation of the system. We don't want that, so we're not considering that for any further evaluation. Similarly, with demand reduction or limiting development isn't in alignment with the city's official plan, so we don't want to do that. Most of the other options that are available to us do have some potential as being useful when combining them together to create a servicing strategy, so they move to the next stage. Just highlighted again a few other the official plan objectives as well, and these are all noted in the official plan, and these have been top of mind as we've worked through the strategy to service that growth. And at a summary level, these are the 4 strategies that we identified. So the first one is upsize the system. So whenever a pipe is under capacity, we recommend it being made bigger. Simple as that. If it's too small, make it bigger. The second one is essentially the same, but are there options to implement system storage in order to save having to make a large amount of pipe bigger? So can we make our strategy more cost effective by implementing some storage instead of just big pipes? The third idea or servicing concept is to divert flow. So as one section of the city system has more available capacity than another, and we looked at this in quite a lot of detail, there were some promising ideas, but ultimately we haven't moved forward with that one. And then due to the geography and the spatial configuration of the Peterborough system, a new treatment plant isn't a wild idea. The river really does divide the city in 2 halves, and at the moment you have a treatment plant on one side, and the idea of having a plant on the other did have some potential as well. So these were the 4 that we took forward to evaluate through this process of identifying the alternatives and evaluating them against each other. And this just lists out through this matrix just a few of the key things that are involved in each one of those 4 strategies in terms of some of those concepts. The top one is probably the only one that needs a little explanation. I&I reduction. that is inflow and infiltration reduction, and that is the ingress of rainwater into the sanitary system. It's allowed for in a design of a new pipe. It happens in every sanitary system, but it is the thing that it ultimately exceeds capacity during a rain event, causes basement flooding, and is a real problem. So being able to reduce that to recapture capacity to service growth is an option that we want to recommend and applies to all 4 of the strategies. I mentioned the evaluation criteria. Beneath each one of those 5 headline criteria is a big list of other sub-criteria which we used in the evaluation of each of those 4 strategies. So for every one of these numbered items that you'll see here, and I'm not going to read them out, we've essentially evaluated and compared those 4 strategies against each other using these sub-bullets, and did come up with a certain amount of scoring associated to each one of these to arrive at our output and our recommended preferred strategy, which is strategy number 2. And if you recall, that is generally upsizing pipes and facilities, pumping stations where required, but we are also incorporating one implementation of a storage location which negates the need for a significant upsizing of a trunk sewer, which we'll see shortly. Using this strategy, we've designed it so that it is able to service growth and maintain a level of service into the future, which is essentially the same, if not better, than the current level of service being provided by the system. Just a quick map to show where we identified through flow monitoring information, which is actually recording flow data in the sewers. We were able to identify some high priority areas where that I&I reduction would be most beneficial, and where there was the highest amounts of I&I being seen in the system. And that's what these 4 areas are here. These are some of the projects which we're recommending should start immediately. And I would add that the city already does an I&I reduction program, and it's ongoing year on year. It's a fighting cause every day for every sanitary sewer operator. But the idea here is a really concentrated reduction campaign in these areas in order to capture capacity to service growth, not just maintain the state of good repair of the existing system. And these are the piped projects and the storage projects that we're recommending in order to service that growth. You can see the green lines, the green highlighted pipes are short-term projects. So they're really an existing problem that's made worse by growth. So as soon as the next new person turns up, it's adding to that existing constraint, which is why we're recommending they need to be done sooner, and then midterm and long term. So as the capacity in those pipes becomes used by the growth coming online, they become a problem later in the future, and then the upsize needs to happen. The cursor, this shows the location of the storage implementation that we're recommending. And by doing this one succinct site of storage, it means we don't have to upsize essentially this whole trunk sewer running down along the river. Without that storage, that whole pipe is under capacity, which is a large length at a great expense. And this is the list of those projects in a table with the associated costs. These are what we would call class 4 cost estimates. So they're quite high level. They're initial estimates, but they're useful from a master planning perspective, and generally what gets used for your initial estimate for your development charges and all of those other aspects regarding the funding of these projects. You can see the timelines that we've put them into 5-year increments. It all depends on when the growth turns up. So if nobody comes, you don't need these. So whilst we've put them in, this is based on the 40,000+ people turning up on the projections that the city staff are planning for. But it's an important point to consider that the city will only start implementing these based on monitoring data and seeing the flow arrive in the sewers. And that's really the summary of recommendations. So strategically increase the system capacity to accommodate growth. We have a plan. If all those people turn up, this is what you're going to need to be doing But if growth is slower, the implementation of these projects would follow that growth. I'm not going to read through all the summary of recommendations here. They were all included in the staff report. Some of the other key pieces that are here is the plan for an increased resilience to climate change, being able to make sure that the system's resilient to that. The I&I reduction piece is really critical for that. So through you, Chair, I would offer that. Any questions for anyone else?
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation of you and your team. So questions, I have Councillor Hakey and Reel and Lachika. Councillor Hakey?
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. This is riveting. This is one of the reasons why I ran for council. You've
just made my day, Councillor.
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask what hobbies you have outside of this, but we'll save that for a later day. This is one of the services that we provide that people don't see. And quite frankly, they don't care about. It's out of sight, and hopefully it's out of smell. And that's the bigger problem that we've got. But I do have a question. If you go back to the slide where it's 1 in 25 historical, the question relates to
which one?
Almost at the start. There, that one there, the second item down. The 1 in 25, I know since 2004, because of the 100-year storm, we spent considerable money in the tens of millions of dollars. And I see here, which is really important, no sewer upgrades required. Would that be because of some of the money that we've already spent on that, where we were inadequate?
Yeah, the selection of these design events is a definite reflection of the current performance of your system. Every municipality wants to get as high a return period as they can in their system and it not cost them hundreds of millions to achieve it. Some municipalities, we would use a lower event, for example, because it becomes affordable. You can only go incrementally. So the 1 in 25 year event it's a big rainfall event. When you apply it in a modeling scenario, not just real life, you apply it on the whole city all at once, which isn't reality. So what we're trying to make sure is in that event, we're not seeing surcharge of the sewer to within 1.8 meters of cover level. That's kind of the measure that we're looking at. So this pipe might be full, and in a lot of times it is, but it's not getting to basement floor level. And obviously that's pretty critical for every homeowner.
And I think it's very important for the citizens to understand with the money that we spent, what we've created or not created is the need to spend on top of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Hakey. I have Councillor Reel, Lachika, and Duguay. Questions to the presenter, Councillor Reel?
To the chair, to the presenter, I don't know when you authored this, but last week we had an election, or we did have an election, and the Prime Minister Carney come out and said that he was going to reduce development charges by 50%. So I'm reading a number of $277,900,000 to fix our problem. So if we're using development charges to pay for this, and he is going to reduce development charges by 50%, where are we ever going to find the money except for taxing the people more to build this? So unless the federal government makes us whole in some sort of fund, which my numbers would be in the trillions of dollars, because every municipality in Canada charges development charges. How is these number prevalent right here if it goes through with a 50% DC charge? I know the numbers are what you're telling us what it's going to cost us, but we would never be able to afford it unless we're able to collect development charges. And the federal government, Premier Ford already tried this and backed off when AMO lobbied him. But here again, how were we going to pay for this without taxing the people to death to try and fix the problem?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Reel, I'm on your team with that for sure. It is a significant issue. All of our master plans, when they're growth driven, we try to ensure that we clearly identify the benefits of the upgrades that are for growth and we feel should be paid by growth. We haven't costed it any differently based on who's paying. The cost is the cost. If you want those 40,000+ people to turn up in the next 25 years, you need this capacity in your system. Who pays for it is a critical question. And if it's not development charges, it is the rate base.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Reel. Councillor Chica.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Beamer. Thank you, GEI, for the presentation. It's really prolific to see the maps and you know what lies beneath. So thank you for that, and it's great to be planning for our future. And what an important investment, as the previous councillor said. Just a question. You did highlight in the last slide, number 4, about climate and that important consideration. So it doesn't specifically discuss mitigation strategies. And according to our 2024 corporate emissions report, which was based on 22 data, nitrous oxide and methane form from our wastewater treatment plant actually produces up to 2% of our corporate emissions. So for that reason, can you share what mitigation strategies? I heard you mention something kind of briefly why something was really important. Can you elaborate on that, the mitigation strategies? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I can a little. I'm not a treatment expert. My experience is mostly conveyance, but through this master plan, we've considered climate change mostly through the conveyance in the flooding, in the increased precipitation causing higher risk of flooding. From a greenhouse gas emission side, that would be the mitigation side rather than adaptation. So on the mitigation side, those extra people will bring more flow to the plant. The I&I reduction, the inflow and infiltration reduction I talked about, that's essentially taking rainwater out of the sanitary system. So to some extent, that would reduce the flows arriving at the plant and would therefore reduce a little on the treatment side. But we don't really touch specifically on greenhouse gas emissions as they relate to treatment.
So thank you, and through you, supplemental, if I may, Chair Beamer. So would that be through our team on city staff to be addressing that mitigation piece? Because, you know, the report, and I look forward to it maybe in the next term, we'll have that climate action tab that we're to have on each report. Would that be something in collaboration with our city staff, with the expertise to address those issues?
Through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. So within the list of projects, there is a treatment plant capacity upgrade required to service that growth as well. That would require a Schedule C Class EA project, which is a really detailed study on what you would need to do to upgrade that facility. Part of that would include looking at what you can do to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions through the treatment process upgrade.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chica. Councillor Degay and then Vasiliadis. Councillor Degay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. James, thank you for your presentation. I do have a few questions. James, you spoke to the I&I reduction strategies, and you had an exhibit showing, I think, 4 specific areas.
Yeah,
I can't recall what page, but I do recall the map. It's one of those, and they were there. So the
not that one. I'll find it.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That one, thank you. The 4 noted areas. This might be a question perhaps of you or Mr. Boland, I'm not sure who. So currently we have a program and we're attempting to eliminate obviously stormwater from finding its way into our sewer, which means we're avoiding treating stormwater at sewage treatment, which makes sense. You're proposing an enhanced program. What's the financial implication or budgetary? Perhaps that's more appropriate, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Boland. I'm just curious if there's a budgetary implication for 2026.
Through you, Chair, I can maybe provide a start of an answer and you can add in. There are 4 specific projects listed in our recommendations which cost out our estimated cost for targeted I&I reduction. And the idea is this is above and beyond your current program. And the only reason that you are doing this is to identify and capture capacity to service growth. So within our master plan, we are listing these projects as having a significant portion as development charge eligible, because you wouldn't be doing it otherwise. This is over and above your current program. So actually identifying the ultimate cost of doing I&I reduction is very difficult, because you're essentially trying to remove rainwater from getting into the sanitary system. And that can be from cracks in the pipe to manholes in the street, but also from private property drainage, from downspouts that are connected to sanitary that shouldn't be, foundation drains that are connected to the sanitary that could be removed. But all of that takes a lot of investigation to find. And then once you find it, you have to then work through removing it, which sometimes includes private side work, working with the public. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason for my inquiry is the areas that are identified are all built areas in our community, but I understood the emphasis was to pay for the bulk of this through DC, which would be new growth. So would that new growth then be able to be applied to remedy some of the I&I in these specific sub areas?
Yeah, so in the downtown core, for example, there is a lot of intensification plans. So there are a lot of new growth planned for the downtown core. Yes, it's a built area, but we're expecting to have more density there. So we don't apply an allowance for extra I&I as a result of that, but we do want to try and remove I&I from that location. And ultimately, anywhere that you do I&I reduction, it benefits any part of the system downstream. So every pipe, every pumping station, and the treatment plant is benefited by I&I reduction, no matter where it is. It doesn't have to necessarily line up to new growth like greenfield growth.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, I have one subsequent question. James, you referenced a storage capacity or Trent University, and I think following probably the armored trunk main. Could you please take us to that map? Thank you. The concerned lands, are those lands that are the city-owned lands, or are they on Trent University lands? Or are you able to comment?
The growth projections that we've been given are upstream of here. Some of it is on city lands, but there is a large intensity of growth plan for Trent University lands as well.
The reason for my inquiry, we're considering capital works storage, and if it's on, I assume perhaps it's premature, but we would have to enter some negotiation with the university if it's not on our lands to create this storage facility, unless it's part of their development.
Through you, Chair, the location of the storage implementation is on city lands.
Okay, that's very helpful.
The growth
Thank you.
that primarily triggers it is from upstream of it.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll add some additional comments later vis-a-vis my comments heard at FCM relative to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Legay. Councillor Vassiliadis?
Through you, Chair. Just a question about the airport. I'm happy to see that the airport's on the plan, and I see there's a replacement cost, and I just thought at a glance up there, it was 23 million. Just wanted, oh no, so it's 11. Okay, so no, it is, so it matches up. 11 million. Okay. So does that include the pumping station? I think I saw the pumping station in there somewhere.
Through you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, there's 2 lines for different projects. One, which is this line here, if you see my cursor, which is the SPS, Sanitary Pumping Station Replacement, which is in at 12.5 million. And then the Airport FM, that's the force main upgrade. The issue with the airport is it's quite far away from the service area, and it is all pumped. So all of the flow is pumped from the airport into the main sanitary city system, which goes through a pressurized main, which would also need to be made bigger as well as the pumping station. So it's a long length of pipe.
Do you foresee any issues? I know there's Highway 115 in that area. Is that a problem at all?
Well, there's an existing alignment. Force mains have the benefit of being pressurized, so you don't have to go downhill.
That's great.
It would be a bit of a tricky alignment, yes, to upsize.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Vassiliadis. Mayor Leo?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and through you, James, thank you very much for your presentation. Just a couple quick questions. We've here at Peterborough experienced two 100-year storms in a 2-year period, 02, 04. And we do know that because of climate change, we're seeing more and more volatile weather patterns. Does the 100-year storm is it still a relevant benchmark in terms of planning when you're looking at water wastewater systems in Ontario?
Through you, Chair, yes. For a sanitary system, you typically wouldn't ever design a sanitary system to that large an event. You would typically look at a 1 in 100 more. So for the stormwater system, and in particular the major system, the overland system, the issue comes is the interaction of these systems when they all get stressed. So in Peterborough's case with the river and the stormwater system, which becomes exceeded, then it finds its way through new paths into the sanitary system. So you may have sanitary flooding, but it was caused from a more fluvial initial source. So it's still relevant to look at. I get your point, Councillor, that the 100-year storms happen every week. And it's also a question of affordability.
No question about that. Mr. Chair, my other question is from the perspective of Hiawatha First Nation. Of course, they have always had a very legitimate concern about the capacity of the Otonabee River. So if we were to pursue over the next a decade or so, Strategy 2, would that allow us to continue to mitigate the peak flows and the overflows going into the Otonabee River in terms of the capacity of the Otonabee River to handle those flows?
Through you, Chair, that's a great question. It's a legitimate concern, especially in light of climate change, when potentially in the future you may have lower flows. So that would reduce the assimilative capacity of the river to take a discharge from a wastewater treatment plant. We are recommending, and you do need, an increase to treatment capacity if this growth comes online. So it will be a definite key point of the design in that Schedule C study that would be required to expand the treatment plant.
Those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leo. Any further questions? Thank you again to you and your team for all your hard work.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Appreciate it. All right, so we do have some recommendations in front of us. Councillor Duguay?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be pleased to move the report, and I'd like to offer a brief commentary, if I might. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Boland for his work with Councillor Cheek and I as we've been hearing about these reports through our portfolio. And James, your team, thank you. At FCM, this very matter of development charges, the federal budget, as it relates to such initiatives, including the mandatory asset management plans, that is a theme that is of great concern. Whilst our Prime Minister might be contemplating or suggesting reducing DC charges or municipalities reducing, FCM has identified, and this was heard across by all municipalities, there has to be a companion in offsetting financial support from the federal government. So some assistance so that if development's paying less, but the federal government has to provide and flow through funding to the provincial government, to municipalities to offset the cost. But that was a theme that was heard loud and clear at FCM. I wanted to share that with my colleagues, but I'd be pleased to move this report nonetheless. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. Any comments or questions on the report? Moved by Councillor Duguay. We'll take a vote. That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Our next item, Queen Alexandra Community Center feasibility study, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Kowalik. And before that, I just note that we have a lot of supporters of Activity Haven in the audience, the executive director, and a lot of board members and users. So thank you for being here. And with that, Mr. Kowalik, I'll pass it to you.
Beamer. I'm pleased to introduce Derek Quilliam. He the firm SVG Architect, firm that we hired to undertake the functional analysis and feasibility study. Derek's a heritage architect with the firm, and he's here to present the findings of the study that support the staff report that's in front of you today. Turn it over to Derek.
Welcome. We'll just get you to push that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Apologies. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to present our report on the Queen Alexandra Community Center. So Plus VG Architects, we were retained by the city in late 2024 after an RFP process. We're architects with extensive experience of working with heritage buildings, and the objective of the study was to undertake a comprehensive feasibility assessment to inform any future redevelopment on the Queen Alexandra Community Center site. Okay. So some of the main factors that were considered in the scope of this report is the addition of up to 60 seniors housing residential units, to maintain the Queen Alexandra Park for future redevelopment of that park, to consider maintaining Activity Haven as a community partner at the site, and to also consider the heritage value of the existing Queen Alexandra Community Center building. So just to Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, I will get used to this technology here. Apologies. So our study, this slide discusses our study methodology for the preparation of the report. And one of the first items on that methodology is to undertake a comprehensive building condition assessment. This establishes our understanding from a building science point of view and heritage concerns the current building conditions, and also to establish an opinion on the heritage significance. The next step of the study was to undertake some interviews and workshops and information gathering sessions with some of the key stakeholders who have an interest with the Queen Alexandra Community Center. So that would include facilities and properties management, social services, as well as planning, development, and urban design divisions, the Peterborough Housing Corporation, Activity Haven, and the Architectural Conservation Advisory Committee, or PACAC. So we had interview and information gathering sessions with those stakeholders, and this informed our understanding of the goals and objectives for the for any future development of the Queen Alexandra site. So from that, then, from our understanding, we developed a number of different options, which in our experience and in our view would cover the full range of the considerations that are going to go into the development of the site. So a number of different options were developed and discussed in our report. So we took a qualitative analysis and a quantitative analysis of each option, and to evaluate how they met the goals and objectives that were identified in the early part of the report. So, just some general observations about the Queen Alexandra building. I'm assuming kind of a general knowledge of the building, rather, so I won't go into too much detail about the history of the site. But originally, the building dates from 1889 and was originally a school. The existing condition of the building is it's retained much of its overall form and its character-defining elements and historic detail, despite having numerous additions and interventions over the past over its lifetime. Particularly regarding the interiors, which have been modified to suit its current programming. The heritage status of the building was added to the Heritage Register as listed property in 2019. So we also identified some of the development challenges which we can see with the Queen Alexandra building. One of the major ones is the envelope, the condition of the building envelope, and that's an important part of of maintaining the condition of the building. We noticed some pretty poor conditions on the envelope. We also we engaged mechanical and electrical engineering firm, Quasar Engineering. They undertook a mechanical and electrical condition assessment. And they discovered that while they've been upgraded and there are some items of equipment which are in good condition, much of it is not really future-proof for any further expansion of the building. Accessibility and washroom requirements or improvements are required, and any addition of seniors housing, as described in the report, the capacity for parking will be a challenge. It would be a challenge to meet on the site. So a number of the priority items we identified for the what we would describe as a state of good repair assessment would be the replacement of the current pitch roof, which is visibly failing in terms of its roof covering shingles. Some structural deficiencies were noticed with the roof itself. Comprehensive masonry and stone conservation of the envelope would be required, as well as some foundation waterproofing and replacement of windows, which are beyond their service life. There are also interior fittings and equipment. The current elevator serving the building is in poor condition. A number of stairways and ladders and ramps are in poor condition, and some deficiencies were noted there. There are also code deficiencies identified with the existing doors and partitions. And the accessibility of the current building setup is not to current requirements. And then we discuss also the mechanical electrical panel board and the disconnect switch require replacement. We'd recommend energy efficient lighting upgrades and the removal of abandoned and obsolete rooftop mechanical equipment. So as we start to discuss options for going ahead, going forward, we identified a number of overall broad strategic approaches to working with heritage assets. And these are a number of approaches which are well established and understood throughout and with well established precedents throughout when working with heritage buildings. The initial approach there, approach A, that was described as retention with a minimal interventions to maintain the current use. So that's really an option that maintains the current status quo of the building and its current its current use as a community center, but that does not contemplate addition of any housing. The second approach there is called adaptive reuse. In this approach, typically the heritage building is comprehensively upgraded and by a process of what we call a deep retrofit. This could involve very extensive structural and building envelope upgrades of the existing building to adapt it to a brand new need and upgrade its performance to modern standards. And as a final approach there identified will be a retention of the facade and a demolition of the remaining obsolete heritage fabric. This type of approach is usually used where there's not much value to the remaining building, and in an area where the heritage building has a significant visual impact on the surroundings. So these were all options that these were all approaches that we considered when formulating our options. So as we developed and worked through this study process, we identified four major themes which were of high importance to the city and to the stakeholders of the Queen Alexandra. So it's well known that there's a need for affordable seniors housing and all types of housing, and there's an increasing demand throughout the province and in all municipalities for increasing the housing availability. In the case of the Queen Alexandra Community Centre, there's an established community programming in that building, and as such was identified as a good fit for the examination of implementing some seniors housing on that site. There's a synergy between the uses and for the addition of new housing. We also acknowledge the heritage values of the Queen Alexandra Community Centre, and that it has a long-established community associations, particularly with its current use, which is a senior centre, but also with the development and the history of the education system in the city. Also, there's an importance on parkland, and as has been identified to us in the preparing of the report, that there's a deficit of parkland space in this location, and one of the key sort of parameters that we examined when going through the options was the maintenance of as much of the parkland as we could, and maintaining a link between the community programming, the housing, and any connections to the parkland space. So as we developed the options, we had a number of the feasibility considerations, and this was to these were considerations which need to be met by any future development. So strategic objectives of the city, the building condition assessment, so the actual condition of the heritage fabric itself, and addressing the deficiencies and the deteriorations that are present there. Heritage considerations, planning and zoning considerations, and parkland, as we've just discussed, and also the requirements of the activity haven, who are the current tenants of the building. Our first option that we identified was what we, rather than describing it we're describing it as a maintenance of the status quo of the current building, and that would be just state of good repair upgrades to maintain the building and the site. The second option is adaptive reuse, and that would be a new residential addition, so new construction added to the site, and a deep retrofit of the Queen Alexandra Community Centre building. Option 3 was one option that we were required to examine, and that was a new build, and that would involve the full removal of the heritage building. And option 4 was another option which we entertained, which was a new build, but with the maintaining of the existing facade of the heritage building. So the development option 1 is maintaining the status quo. And we have costs outlined in the report for this option. It's important to note that it's not a zero cost option. The building as it stands has a number of deficiencies and deteriorations and issues in terms of its condition that we recommend really should be addressed, whichever option the city decides to go with. And that ignoring these issues that we've identified in our condition report would be very detrimental to the building asset as it stands. And these deteriorated conditions can accelerate if not addressed. So we've identified some priorities and some items that need to be addressed going forward. So what some of the obvious drawbacks of this option would be that there are there's no housing obviously being added to the site in this option, and there's no significant major improvements or enhancements to the programming or performance of the building, although envelope upgrades will significantly improve the existing conditions. It's also a low impact, and it maintains a continuity of use for the activity haven and maintains all of the parkland that exists. Just to describe the diagram here, this is development option 2, which we describe as the residential addition and adaptive reuse of the Queen Alexandra existing building. So in this diagram here, you can see the red line is the existing site boundary. You can see the parkland to the north of the building. There's a black dotted line here, which denotes the existing boundary between the parkland and the existing car park. The pink section here is the existing Queen Alexandra building. And we have a number of we have a number of additions to it shown on in this drawing. So to the west of the building there is the yellow box, and that is the new residential programming. We've also identified some of the setbacks and the constraints that that we discovered for the site. Also included in this option is an expansion of the existing programming and the community center program and spaces. In this option, you can see here how we've developed it further in 3 dimensions. And you can see the blue is a community center program. Yellow is a 5-story residential addition to the side of the existing Queen Alexandra building, which would retain its community center programming. And you can see there's some of the blue section extends into the base of the new addition onto the side of the Queen Alexandra. This is the third development option, and this was the full removal of the Queen Alexandra building. In this option, we explored a brand new community center with residential accommodation above it, and you can see the numbers there that we came up with. So in this option there were 38 units, which was a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units with a separate residential entrance at the ground floor, and a new community center on the lower floors of the building. So you can see the how this building would could be programmed with the community center on the ground floor, residential accommodation on the floors above, and a residential entrance lobby at the base. Development option 4 contemplates retaining the heritage facade of the Queen Alexandra and building a new building at the back of it. So you can see the accommodation that we managed to achieve with this option. 39 units, a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms with a separate residential entrance at the ground floor, and community center on floors 1 and 2 of the new building. And here is a schematic 3-dimensional exploded view of development option 4. So some of the assessments, so our assessment of those options really based on the criteria we identified earlier in the study. The first option, which is we call the status quo option, where we just maintain the existing building. This does not address the objectives of providing seniors housing, so it doesn't address those needs. But it does satisfy the retention of the heritage asset and its maintenance into the future. Option 2, this option meets all of the qualitative criteria we identified. It adds the housing to that adds housing, and it maintains the community programming that exists within the building at the moment. This one does go encroach onto the existing parkland, and this is to meet the parking requirements for the amount of units which are contemplated. It maintains the cultural heritage of the Queen Alexandra Community Centre building and takes a climate positive approach through the reuse of existing fabric. The third option, and our assessment of that was that it does provide housing and community programming and maintains the existing park space. However, it does not meet the desired goal of maintaining the Queen Alexandra Community Centre. And our assessment of it really is, given the other constraints, that we have identified there, it adds a modest amount of additional housing capacity to the site, but also unfortunately would not maintain the Queen Alexandra building in place. Option 4 mostly meets these criteria, but to a lesser degree, partially maintains the facade of the Queen Alexandra, so it would maintain its presence in the community and the area, and would have some cultural and heritage, like a memory of the building once it's if it was to proceed with this option, and it does maintain the existing park space without encroachment. So in developing these options, we did outline costing for this for the various different options. The first option there is status quo, retaining the Queen Alexandra building with no residential redevelopment. We envisage approximately $10 million capital investment in the building. And we've gone into more detail in that. What that would be, we would envisage that as a combination of capital outlay spending and also increased maintenance cost for the building over a forthcoming 10-year period. The second option, the deep retrofit and the 5-story residential addition. We have a total area of 5,500 square meters. And you can see the breakdown between the residential accommodation and the heritage building conservation and the shared amenity. So that we identified a cost of $40 million for that. Option 3 is a new build residential and community use building. So that's the option where the Queen Alexandra is removed. And you can see the breakdown of that. We identified a cost of approximately 36.7 million for that option. The new build residential and the facade retention of the Queen Alexandra with a similar cost of approximately $36 million there, with a similar breakdown between residential and heritage conservation within the budget. So some of our conclusions. The Queen Alexandra Community Centre has a major heritage significance to the city, culturally and architecturally, and it meets the minimum tests required for heritage designation. It was listed as for designation, although it has not been currently is not yet been designated. So we would recognize the reasons put forward for designation and would concur with that as heritage architects. There's a backlog of, our second conclusion is there's a backlog of maintenance work required on the building, and as discussed before, we should see these if the building is to be retained or whatever use it is to be retained for the future. These items should be addressed as a matter of priority. The third conclusion there is that the site is not overly large and doesn't have a huge capacity for redevelopment of housing on the site. One of the main constraints there is obviously the setbacks and the actual size of the site, but also the parking considerations. So, given the parking and the requirement to maintain as much as the parkland as possible, our study found that we're limited in this site to a range of approximately 38 to 40 units, depending on which option was selected. And conclusion 4, which is our opinion on the 4 options presented, is that option 2, which is the adaptive reuse of the building in place and addition of the 5-story addition at the side of the building, is the one that meets the most of the qualitative criteria that were set out at the start of this report. There is some impact on the parkland, but there's approximately a 12% premium for this option, and it would also be the preferred heritage development approach, as it maintains the building and upgrades it and secures it for future going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So questions? Councillor Hickey, you wanted to move it, but do you have a question or?
No questions at the time, but I'll move it at the appropriate
I'll
time.
come to you at the recommendations. Councillor Burke, questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beamer. Through you to Mr. Quilliam. I just have a question, please, about the option 1, the staff recommended option. Does that represent the most sort of phased or incremental maintenance strategy?
So it's through the chair. Does it represent the most phased or incremental strategy? So yes, the answer is there are capital improvements recommended that could be addressed in a phased or sequential way.
What I'm asking, Chair Beamer, is that the thing that stuck out to me from this report was the cost attached to each of the options. To me, it felt like a high cost for us, considering the budgetary pressures that we're under. So I'm asking, with the first option, you have your laundry list of things that need to get done. But given our budget pressures, is there a way to approach that list of things that need to get done in the most phased and incremental way, so that we can, carry the cost as a municipality?
Yes, is the
Things that,
answer.
are there, through the chair, are there things that must be done? And are there some things that should be done? And can we sort of like look at the things that must be done first?
Through the chair, yes, is the answer. We've identified those priority items. We've assigned a priority to them. They're most of them are not optional. If you wanted to use that term, they're required for the building, particularly any of the exterior envelope requirements or upgrades or addressing any of the problems with the existing exterior envelope. I would recommend being quite a high priority. And then we've assigned priorities, medium, high, or low priority to the other items we've identified. Also, sort of life cycle. For instance, with the mechanical and electrical equipment, we've given an idea of remaining life cycle on that equipment, so that the budget can be spread out over a number of years.
Thank you. And Chair Beamer, through you, are there, in your expertise, are there grants that we can tap into through the heritage lens that would allow us maybe to have some support with, as we're looking at upgrading the roof and looking at masonry work that has to be done? Are there grants that municipalities are able to tap into that would help cover these costs?
Through the chair, I'm not specifically aware of any particular grants. Usually, the grants are done through the local municipality. So the authority having jurisdiction would be the city of Peterborough.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Chica?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really helpful to hear the detail in each of the options. I was listening carefully when you said that the site is somewhat limited in terms of its development potential. I look at Queen Alexandra Community Center, and I see a beautiful old school, really. And in cities like Peterborough that have schools of that age and caliber in terms of its architecture, et cetera. Schools like that are renovated and repairs are done, and it's just as a matter of course because it performs a function for the now 1,300, not students, but seniors who engage in programs very similar to what students would do as they go every day to school. So, I do see the value and appreciate that that you have explained the advantages to option one and that the report reflects that. Certainly, in my conversations with Activity Haven, the leadership and the clients that use Activity Haven, one of their concerns was the difficulty to be able to find an appropriate site for all the programs that they have access to in a place that is really ideal for the purposes of their programs and to serve a large population of people. So, I think that context is really helpful and useful. And my question to you is, option two as well has its advantages. And my question is, with a $4 million difference in your chart between option one and option two, what is your opinion in terms of, would we be able to still sustain programming for 1,300 clients and have that extra 32-unit residential building? We'd be preserving the architectural integrity. What would, in your opinion, certainly we have the staff's opinion, would be the most beneficial choice? Thank you very much, Chair Beamer.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, I'll just answer that. I mean, it would be impossible to execute any of the three options that involve an addition to the site. I shouldn't say impossible, but it would come with significant challenges to maintain any any activities on the site during that construction. It's not impossible with the with option 2, which would be the adaptive reuse of the existing building, but it would come with significant challenges in doing that work. Just significant physical and construction challenges in doing that work while maintaining the programming. Any of the option 3 or 4, which contemplates the either removal or major removal of portions of the Queen Alexandra would significantly impact the use of, or alternative accommodation would need to be found in the interim while the construction project was underway.
Thank you. And just supplemental, Chair Beamer. So you would concur with the points that staff have made to suggest option 1 as the most beneficial option?
I'll defer that question, I think, to
Commissioner Laidman, did you want to make a comment
Sorry,
to Councillor
yeah.
Pika?
Sorry if I could, I just wanted to make sure we weren't confusing items here to make, I think it's important as part of this discussion that it was mentioned that there's a $4 million difference between options 1 and 2. There's a $30 million difference between options 1 and 2. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't going left unsaid and unrecognized by council before we proceeded. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Commissioner Laidman. The slide flashed quickly, and I think thank you for clarifying that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chica. Thank you, sir. Councillor DeGay, questions?
Oops. Thank you, Chair Beamer. Mr. Quilliam, by way of introduction, your firm some years ago did the important heritage preservation work in the town of Clinton, of which my office was within the library portion of that project. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Sir, the option number 2, or excuse me, I'll speak to option number 1. There would be disruption to the programming in the building, correct?
Through the chair, yes, correct. Although it could be, it's possible to phase that and minimize that disruption.
Okay, but there would be, because I believe almost all of us around this table have met happily so with the board of directors and management at Queen Alexandra Community Center, and they've expressed concerns about disruption of activities because really it's not an easy alternative location. Now, sir, with your, I want just briefly on option number 2, to what extent, if any, have you yet talked with our planning department? Mr. Appleby, I believe, is somewhere. Mr. Nelson, have you had opportunity yet to talk to planning about option 2?
I believe we've talked about option 2, although when we consulted with planning, I believe our options were not fully developed. At that point, we may have discussed the overall strategic, like in our earlier slide, where, broad options. Sorry,
Okay.
I should be addressing the chair. I'm sorry with my answers. I'm sorry.
And that's fine, Mr. Quilliam. Mr. Chairman, I may, during the discussion, have a question directly of Mr. Appleby in this regard, but thank you, sir, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Councillor DeGay. Councillor Real?
Through the chair are we allowed to ask questions of staff, or are we just asking from the presenter?
Right now, I think Councillor Real will just stick with the presenter, and then when we get to recommendations, we can open it up to staff. I'll put you on the list after Councillor Hakey. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beamer. And I just was, during the conversation, had some questions. As I have contemplated through the report, the options, as I've talked to the other councillors where they're at, and now hearing your presentation to us, I think the thing that's kind of lingering in my mind is that it seems like the staff recommended option is a good option. It allows for all of the things that are important to us and to the community to remain intact. But I'm coming back to option 2 where, I don't know where we'll find the money, but it feels like from a pro forma perspective that if we're already investing the 10 million into the upgrades, we possibly have a chance with the $40 million option to have the upgrades be done, but then expand the site within its capacity and create some much needed housing for seniors. When you're looking at all the options through, I guess, without the budgetary pressures that we have to concede with, does the option 2 make the most sense?
Through the chair, I think if there was no cost implication, I think the preferred heritage approach and the preferred approach for dealing with a heritage building like this, for a number of reasons, within the field and within our profession, I think option 2 would be a preferred approach. But that's a broad kind of statement rather than specific here. We've dived into the detail of it here. It maintains the heritage assets, and it also it kind of gives it a new lease of life and acts as a catalyst for the development of the surrounding community.
I guess the perspective through the chair that I'm tapping into is that, you know, the number that I've heard from our staff, the bricks and mortar cost for one affordable apartment unit to build from scratch is around $400,000 per unit. This feels like it's less than that. We get more. We get the 30 or so units for. It feels like it's less than that per unit. Is there a benefit to build when you're building housing onto something that already exists in terms of keeping the cost down?
Through the chair, the answer to that is no. There's if anything, there's additional complexity to building anything in a heritage context.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair Beamer.
All right, thank you very much for being here and all your hard work to you and your team.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right, recommendations. I have Councillor Hakey and Councillor Reel. Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the report, and then I have a question of Commissioner Laidman, please. Commissioner, is there contingency in these numbers that were presented tonight, the 10 million? Is there a 20% contingency? Or the 40 million?
Through you, Chair Beamer. So those are pure construction costs. So it does mention in the report that there's additional costs on top of that even. So that would be another 30% for soft costs associated with various things on options 2, 3, and 4, and even option 1 as well, and potentially for engineering costs, you know, plans development, you know, insurance, all those kind of things that would go into any construction project.
Thank you. If I can, Mr. Chair, it's mark it in your calendars because it's not a common day when you hear Hakey and heritage preservation in the same conversation. But this is a perfect example. I know Councillor Riel will repeat it for you later, but this is a perfect example of what I've been talking about. When the owner, which is the city, is okay with it, I'm okay with it. And I think it's a great way to go. Option 1, I know all councillors have met with Activity Haven and spoken with the directors and the ED. Councillor Beamer and I last week had a nice meeting with them, and they were very happy with option 1 because it's the least intrusive of it. To the other point, I can say melding old with new is very expensive. You can speak with Mr. Jane, who did Wylofts. It was a $7 million bill that he wasn't quite expecting. So that's why, for me, I like option 1. And again, it does preserve the building. The building on the outside is very unique. It's like the old King George School, and they're saving that too. But again, it's for the community. 1,300 members are using it, and it is very active. In fact, I qualified, so I signed up. Believe it or not, I'm a senior. And I have signed up, and there's a couple members there that want to take me on at ping pong. So I'm looking forward to that in the old facilities or the new one, Mark, whatever you prefer. But I think from a cost perspective also, and it's like I remember being involved in the CAT scan fund the government recognized that having imaging is very cost effective, but they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford to buy them. We can't, I don't think we can afford to put $40 million into this because of what Mr. Laidman just said, the contingencies for melding old and new, over 100-year-old building into something new. I think it would be better to take the little park and put up 20 building. Anyways, that's my comments on that, and I hope that council see their way through to option one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eki. I have Councillor Reel, Duguay, and Burke. Councillor Reel?
Through the chair to Mr. Laidman, following up on Councillor Burke's question about where are you going to draw the money from doing any of these options? Whether it's 1 through 4, where's your plan to get any of these monies to do any of these options? Whether it's 10 million or $40 million.
Well, through you, Chair Beamer, I think for option one, which is the preferred option, right, by staff, maybe I'll let Ms. Barnes answer that, as that will be her budget for the capital budget. But I can tell you that obviously all the buildings in the city are considered as the capital needs, and if council approves option one, Ms. Barnes and her team will be evaluating the priorities to bring forward on a yearly basis to try to preserve those buildings as best we can. But I think it's quite clear we are often challenged with maintaining all the buildings the city has already, but this is the best option we can put in front of council right now. But I'll let Ms. Barnes answer potentially more in-depthly.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Commissioner Laidman. I think you actually covered it. What we're seeing here in the option one is basically over time the deferred maintenance that has not come forward to the council budget. This building is not alone, this facility. It's the same for many city facilities. Every year we have that conundrum of what to bring forward, what's in the worst condition, what's in the best condition, and how do we address that? So annually we have this situation that we, have to bring forward changes to our budget and reductions on our budget, and this is the outfall of that. So as the consultant presented, there is a 5-year immediate plan. All of the work that was required is in a sort of high priority, medium priority, down to a low priority. We're starting with the roof. It does need some work, and so some of the elevator work as well, to bring that up to code. So it was planned out over a 5-year period, and then some additional items in years 5 through 10. And as the building ages, that work will continue. We're not going to spend $10 million over a 10-year period and never have to spend again. That's not the case for any building. We're continuously updating them. Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Laidman, where did you get the comparators? Where did you get the data from when you said that the room rental was, I think, was $6.19 was way too low compared to other buildings? So what was your comparators from a Activity Haven, which is a seniors facility? What did you compare with, Maple Ridge or something else? Where did you get that comparator?
Through you, Chair Beamer. So that's a comparator of our other recreation related facilities that the city owns. So if we look at, for instance, McDonald Street Activity Center, which is a very comparable building, we rent that out for approximately $600 a day, the upstairs part of it alone. So if you extrapolate those types of costs as to what other groups are paying for other recreational facilities that under the city's ownership, this does not currently compare to that. There may be some other valuable reasons why we're subsidizing the use of this building, but if we compare what we are charging other users of our other recreational facilities, this is currently not on par with that, with those facilities. That includes everything from arena rentals to meeting rooms, Navy Club, McDonald Street, the meeting rooms at the Miskin Law Center or other facility or the Wellness Center. They just don't currently compare with the amount being charged to other user groups.
Through the chair to Mr. Laidman, when you were doing this comparison, did you take into account that the Activity Haven is a place for seniors on fixed incomes? Do any of that, or did that not come into, just you looked at comparators of buildings? We charge this, so we should be charging this at Activity Haven.
Through you, Chair Beamer. I'm hard pressed to say that there should be one demographic that's favored in the city for its city's users compared to others. Currently, we're charging $95 for someone to sign up for their children's swim lessons, as an example. We're charging $200 a day, an hour, to use our arenas to children and adults. Someone pays $500 a year to sign up for kids soccer in the city to use our facilities. They are paying much higher rates than this group. And there's, in my estimation, it's not justified to use that as the only metric to charge a user group. We have other programs in the city that can provide subsidy to persons who are of low income, whether they're of any demographic, older, younger, middle-aged, that are available to persons if they have trouble accessing recreational programs in the city. But in my estimation, that's not a justification for charging a different rate for the city's recreational facilities.
Sure, Mr. Laidman, I guess the point that I was trying to make here, and you answered part of the question, is a business plan to make something pay for itself. So if you make an expenditure of $10 million, how would you recoup that city? So you're telling me that you would do that in rental charges and whatever else. And I'm wondering if that's the same type of matrix that you're using. And let's say when we built the Miskin-Law Arena for $65 million, how would we ever recuperate our costs over a 30-year period or whatever that period is? So is this the justification that you're using?
Yeah, through you, Chair Beamer. It's definitely our goal for recreational programs to cover costs going forward. Historically, that hasn't always been the case, and it's a challenge, and it will be a challenge for this. I don't think there's any value in saying that we will be able to recoup the multi-million dollars of costs that you're seeing in front of you by the user groups of that building. But I do think there's an opportunity to evaluate whether we're charging the appropriate amount for the type of user that's in that building. I'm not saying it's going to change tremendously, but I'm also not telling council that we'll be able to recoup the $10 million over the next 10 years by raising the rental rates, because that's also not feasible in this expensive a building, for sure. But I think we can have a better goal of trying to achieve that and putting in alignment with our other recreational facilities.
Councillor Real, would you like to go back on the list? You sure? Okay, thanks, Councillor Real. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. I was prepared to support option 2. But insofar as, having visited this property many times, but I also balance that appropriately with my meeting, and a very productive meeting with the task force and staff at Queen Alexandra Community Center. But as I understand from Ms. Barnes' explanation, there'll be a program of retrofits, if I understand this correctly, but I don't see the program of retrofits necessarily negating at a future time the prospect of a building addition. And it would warrant, in those circumstances, a private-public partnership. And who knows what the funding scenario would be. So my question, it might be a bit unfair to Ms. Barnes, but here we go. You don't see option 1, if the building is improved over a period of time, do you see that necessarily negating the prospect, if ever, of an addition to accommodate either more space for Queen Alexandra or mixed space, including residential?
Through the chair to Councillor Duguay. I'm actually going to ask my colleague Amelie Besnard to answer that question. She's been working on this file more closely, so is far more familiar with all of the options. Thank you.
That's fine.
Through the chair to Councillor Duguay, the cost for the option one would not negate any future development comparable to the option two if funding were to become available. And yeah, so.
Mr. Chairman, what I really want to be clear, if we pursue option one, which is a program of necessary renovations to an important building, important to 1,300 persons and more, would it discourage or prohibit a future building addition if ever such was possible and contemplated?
Through the chair, the answer is no, it wouldn't prohibit it, but I do want to be quite clear in that the option two that everyone seems quite interested in is quite expensive as a price per unit on a housing, specifically if we were looking for a senior affordable housing. I would say it's almost actually double what we've spent on Monaghan Road so far. So I would caution option two. As a future entity, I think we have other opportunities across the city with land that we own, properties that PHC currently own that are used for seniors, that we could consider as a more viable return on investment for council. Thank you.
Chair Beamer, if I might add, quickly doing the math, I recognize that the what I think would be the square foot cost for residential would be excessive. Because of the, as Councillor Hakey has identified, attempting to merge new and old is with its complications. So whilst I would prefer, I would support in principle option two, option one seems to be an appropriate option. It's the least disruptive to a valued and important community facility. And as you've said, Ms. Barnes, it appears there may be some other more suitable options for housing, newer locations elsewhere on city lands in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duguay. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer, through you to Commissioner Laidman and Sheldon. In the report, it said that Peterborough Housing Corp was one of the people that was consulted with in the sort of staff working group with the consultants. Were there some preliminary conversations with them just about operating the sort of housing options and the other plans that aren't being recommended?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Burke. PHC was involved in the engagement sessions purely as like a potential operator of the building if housing was to be added to the property.
So through the chair, if we were to do one of the options that included housing, that would be one of the things that we'd have to sort out, would be who would manage the housing side of it. Activity Haven wouldn't manage it, right?
No.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. All right, moved by Councillor Hakey. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. So we'll move to our committee reports. I have 13A, Integrity Commissioner Joint Inquiry Report. I have Councillor Baldwin and Councillor Reel. Councillor Baldwin?
We are about 14 months after the events. Something that happened in 2024. I'd like to put forward a pending motion, if I get the clerk to load that for us, please. And I'd like to speak to it.
Yep, go ahead. We'll make sure we get it up though, and
If I can read it, Mr.
sure.
Whereas the city's integrity commissioner has delivered joint inquiry report 2025 ONMIC 4 dated May 26, 2025, respecting complaints alleging contraventions by Mayor Leal of the council code of conduct. And whereas the integrity commissioner has concluded that Mayor Leal did not contravene the code of conduct in one circumstance and that he did in the other two circumstances. And whereas the integrity commissioner does not recommend a penalty and notes that a decision on penalty belongs to council. Now therefore be resolved, 1, that there be no penalty imposed in response to Joint Inquiry Report 2025, ONMIC 4 dated May 26, 2025. And 2, that the remedial measures referenced in the report be referred to staff for consideration in relation to potential amendments, the council code of conduct, and the procedure bylaw. So, Mr. Chair.
Of order.
Councilor Reel, point of order.
We are here tonight with the Integrity Commissioner's report that states there was a breach of the code of conduct. If the councillor wants to make amendments to the code of conduct, that should be either done in the business that we have, either under new business or a notice of motion. But we are here tonight to talk about the Integrity Commissioner's report and to make a decision either what is going to be the penalty as prescribed by Guy Journeau, the Integrity Commissioner.
Okay, so
Not to look at a change of the code of conduct, which already states bullying in it.
okay, so Councilor, I'll have you on the list. Number 1 does talk about the penalty. So I rule this in order because number 1 does deal with a penalty or no penalty or what the penalty is. So that is in the amendment. And so I will rule it in order, but I have you next on the list if you'd like to speak to it. Right, so Councilor.
Prepared to deal with this tonight as a city councillor and have a motion to do that in which to speak on it. And it has absolutely nothing to do with negating my job as a city councillor reading an Integrity Commissioner report and what should be done tonight, either A, B, or C.
Okay, so Councilor, I'll have you on the list. Right now, the motion does deal with penalty or no penalty, so that is being discussed right now and voted on in the amendment, but I have you on the list to speak to it. So Councilor Baldwin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I realize that in general committee, you can speak up to 3 times. And I may take longer than the first 5 minutes if I'm allowed. So I'm just going to read, Mr. Chair, what I have here. And I certainly respect the comments to my my ward councillor. So, Mr. Chair, the Integrity Commissioner produced a 55-page report, a joint inquiry report, which was dated on May the 26th, 2025. From Tarian, Hale, Attell versus Leal, and La Chica versus Leal. The report addresses collective complaints regarding a meeting and a complaint for Councilor Chica from Councilor La Chica following that meeting. The collective complaints were filed individually, alleging that Mayor Leal contravened the City of Peterborough Council Code of Conduct, bylaw number 19-028, by making a threat to Councilor Burke during the April 2nd, 2024 General Committee meeting, and by participating in decision-making on the Bonneworth Park redevelopment when it was alleged that Mayor Leal was not impartial. According to the IC report on April the 27th, 2024, Councillor Chica filed a complaint alleging that the mayor bullied and intimidated her out of view of the public following the April 2nd meeting. An investigation commenced. Mr. Chair, Mr. Yurmo's report is now in the public domain. This report concludes that Mayor Leal did not contravene Section 29 of the City of Peterborough Council Code of Conduct, specifically in participating in decision-making relative to the redevelopment of Bonneworth Park. With respect to the mayor's comments to Councillor Burke, the Integrity Commissioner noted a non-issue that does not overlap the procedural bylaw and that was not allowed and was not addressed by the chair, i.e. the chair did not rule, did the mayor engage in intimidation contrary to Section 10 of the code? The Integrity Commissioner has concluded rather, that the mayor's words to Councillor Burke were figurative and cannot be reasonably interpreted as a threat of physical violence. This is an important distinction, Mr. Chair. The Integrity Commissioner concludes that the mayor's words were inappropriate and the mayor has apologized in public. With respect to Councillor Chica's complaint, the Integrity Commissioner has ruled that the mayor's interaction with the councillor contravened Section 10 of the Council Code of Conduct. The reason, Mr. Chair, for my motion stems from the Integrity Commissioner's report. I do find it unusual that while the Integrity Commissioner determines if sections of the Council Code of Conduct were contravened, the decision respecting a penalty, if any, falls to council. And there are a range, colleagues, of options cited in the Integrity Commissioner's report. A, no penalty. B, a reprimand. C, suspension of pay for up to 90 days. What I find unusual in this circumstance is the mayor, rightly so, has chosen to recuse himself. He is not in council chambers, not involved in the discussion, and will not be involved in the decision-making process. While other parties, either directly named or indirectly, are sitting here and will be participating in
Point
making
of order.
decisions.
Councillor Burke, your point of order?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beamer. I think that it's an unfair criticism to name me and Councillor LaChica as having some pecuniary interest in this situation where we are in fact the victims of what happened.
Okay.
Mayor Leal recused himself because there is a pecuniary interest. We're dealing with his pay. And if we were dealing with my pay or Councillor LaChica's pay or any other conflict as stated in our code of conduct and our municipal guidelines, we would recuse ourselves.
Okay, I hear you, Councillor Burke. Yep, yep. Thank you. Councillor Bowen has the floor, and ladies and gentlemen, you've been very good. Just ask you to be respectful and no verbal outbursts like you have been. So thank you. Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was trying to convey here, Mr. Chair, is that I just find it an unusual circumstance. That's all. I'm not suggesting that the councillors need to recuse themselves. In fact, I was cited twice directly in the Integrity Commissioner's report, sitting over where Councillor Crowley was at the time and being asked by the Integrity Commissioner what I heard or thought that I heard at the time. There was a conversation from the mayor at General Committee. Unlike many people who are sitting here, Mr. Chair, I was also party to the conversation between the mayor and the councillor opposite in the hallway, out of view from the public. Many of you weren't. I witnessed it, and I conveyed to the best of my ability at the time when I was asked by the Integrity Commissioner what I observed and what I heard. And the Integrity Commissioner's report conveys what I said to him. Some members of council weren't there. The majority weren't. And I'm not here, Mr. Chair, I accept the Integrity Commissioner's report. All I'm trying to say is that we have three options before us. No penalty, a reprimand, and it doesn't say what form the reprimand may or may not take, or a suspension of up to 90 days pay. My own gut feeling and my own impression, Mr. Chair, having known the mayor for 58 years, I believe in my heart that the mayor apologized in public. Shake your head, Councilor Chica, that's fine. And I believe the mayor in the public domain.
Point of order.
Okay, Councilor LaChica, what's your point of order?
There is a disparaging remark made in a cross-talking fashion, and that's out of decorum for councilors to do to another councilor.
Okay.
And I'm asking that you call that, please.
Okay, Councilor Chica, I didn't see that. I think he's been speaking through the chair. He has referenced other councilors, but
He spoke directly to me.
Okay,
Across the horseshoe.
apologies. So just a friendly reminder, if we can just always speak through the chair, and I'll do a better job, Councilor LaChica, of paying attention. But everyone just through the chair. Councilor Baldwin has the floor.
Through the chair, Mr. Chair, if I've offended the council in any way, I do apologize to you and to the public. Mr. Chair, the motion's there for council's consideration. But I would like to ask our CAO a question, if I may, through you. Mr. Reyna, we have been receiving several emails from the public, myself included, many of whom are suggesting to councilors that we take a very specific course of action. And through the chair to you, I'd like to ask you two questions as CEO. I'm wondering if you'd be able to convey or speak to your experience with Mayor Leal with respect to any behavioral concerns you have or any red
All right.
flags.
Point of order.
Ladies and
What
gentlemen,
does
ladies and
this to
gentlemen.
do with this?
So Councilor,
This doesn't have anything to do with what the CEO of the city feels about the mayor or his conduct with him. It has to do with this report right here. Nothing.
and Councilor, I agree. The recommendation in front of us is A, which is one of the options. That's the amendment. So Councilor, I am going to rule it in order, asking staff a question, and then
Point of order.
we'll get on to it. So
Point of order, Chair.
Councilor LaChica, what's your point of order?
My point of order is that the nature of the question that's being conveyed to the CAO is not appropriate. There has been an investigation undertaken through the proper procedure based on the Municipal Act, and this is not a time to relitigate that based on one councillor's opinion and asking for support via the CAO. The nature of the question is inappropriate. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Chica. So I'll allow the question. Commissioner Reyna, CAO Reyna.
Good evening, Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, at this time, all I will say that my interactions with the mayor are related to the staff because I meet him daily as well as he meets the leadership team once in a week. So my comments are related to his interaction with the staff. So I will say over the past 2 years as a CEO.
Point of order.
Okay, so Councilor Burke.
Yeah.
What's your point of order?
My point of order is that this has nothing to do with the report that we're discussing. We're talking about a very specific event between the mayor and members of council. The report has nothing to do and makes no mention of the relationship between the mayor and staff. And
Okay.
in fact, the Guy Giorno specifically left staff out of the report because of the complexity of that relationship.
Okay.
So I think it's unfair to not include staff's perspective in the report as Giorno chose to do. And
Okay,
yet
so
now-
Councilor Burke, I've allowed it. I've already done a ruling on this. So Commissioner, CAO, we've had 6 points of order, and we'll try to give Councilor Baldwin the floor, and then I have Councilor Riel and La Chica. CAO Reyna.
So his interaction with the staff, as per the CEO's perspective, as well as I've seen him in the leadership team, they're extremely professional, and I have not seen any issues there. And as per his behavior is concerned, and it's the second question you asked about the red flags, my comment is no red flags.
Okay, thank you, CAO Reyna. So Councilor Bong, we have had 7 points of order, but you have about a minute and a half left on your second 5 minutes.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll try and finish up without having any more points of order. I hope my colleagues appreciate this is a pretty monumental decision this evening that we're discussing. I'll go back several years, Mr. Chair, just to kind of put this in perspective with respect to a 90-day potential penalty. One of our previous mayors, Daryl Bennett, was mayor and did not take any remuneration. So, you know, if we were discussing a different person who was not taking any pay, I'm not sure how item 3 would even be implemented. I know that's not the case here, but I just wanted to point that out. The second part of the motion, Mr. Chair, comes directly from the Integrity Commissioner's report, that we look at the IC's recommendations regarding possible remedial measures found in sections 302 to 306 of the IC's report, which does form part of this amending motion. I'll leave it at that because I'm sure my colleagues have some comments that they'd like to make.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldwin. So we have an amendment by Councillor Baldwin, and just to be clear to Councillor Riel's point, number 1 does reference the report as a no penalty. So I have Councillor Riel and La Chica. So Councillor Riel, speaking to the amendment.
I will not be supporting this motion for several reasons. There are 3 options that we're supposed to look at because of the Integrity Commissioner's report. 1, no penalty. 1 would be item 2, which is, for the mayor to do some things. And the 3rd would be a penalty of 60 days and no pay. I read this report, and I was a witness to both of the incidents, Councillor Burke, Councillor La Chica. So just like my colleague to the right of me, I was a witness on both these here. I know what I seen, and I know what I seen and said and heard. And certainly what was conveyed by my colleague is not what happened in that instance. I think that the integrity.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Baldwin, what's your point of order?
I take exception to the comments from the councillor. He can't possibly know what I inferred from my observations.
Okay, so Councillor Riel, you have the floor, and we'll just keep that in mind.
He opened the door when he started his motion.
Okay, so everything through the chair, and we'll work on that. So Councillor Riel has the floor.
So I've read the commissioners or the Integrity Commissioner's report. And certainly, yes, it said that he could not find any fault on the item with Bonneworth with the mayor. The other 2, he specifically said he found the mayor guilty of the broaching, the conflict of the conduct of the mayor. Having said that, that's what we're here to discuss. So the counselor or other counselors could say that they agree that maybe there shouldn't be any penalty. I don't feel that way, and I'm prepared to make a motion that I think is fair to the counselor or to the mayor. I think it's what council should be doing, but also the general public is looking for some sort of action. And certainly from the emails, the phone calls, and the in-person meetings, It's not a slap on the wrist and do nothing. I'm sorry. That isn't what I'm hearing. I think that we all are held to a standard. I think the mayor is, because of the voice and the face of the city, is held to a higher standard than all of us. And if that has been broached, then something should be done about it, and I'm prepared to do that tonight.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Reel. Councillor Chica?
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. I didn't intend to say anything tonight, but I will speak because what the previous speaker has stated through emotion, and the message is loud and clear, is that it's okay. That it's okay what happened in that corridor. That it's okay what happened a second time amongst council and with council as witness. And that it's okay whatever continued occurrences may or may not have occurred. And through you, Chair, on the previous speaker's point about that there was an apology made, that speaker is not privy to the session with the Integrity Commissioner and the mayor and myself. So to be making statements based on that is not in order in my mind. I just needed to say that piece. One who was not in that room with Integrity Commissioner Giorno, Mayor Leal, and myself cannot possibly know the nature of the attempt to resolve it, nor the outcome and why it's taken all this time. And one has to wonder and connect the dots that it's taken this time because there was a great deal of effort and diligence that went into this investigation and to come to this conclusion. So I have difficulty with the fact that there's an attempt to relitigate this here. However, here's the statement that I would just like to make. I doubt anyone who looks to serve our municipality as an elected official would do so in order to be quiet, or to do so as one would have an action be expected by any single person, a cluster, or a group around the table. We don't do things because somebody else thinks it's the thing that we ought to be doing. We shouldn't be told to do things. We are here and we seek this work because we love it, and we do it in alignment with our conscience, our values, our ethics, and to uphold the voices of our constituents. The constituents who elected us. We listen, we should listen, we learn, we vote, and we make decisions. In a changing landscape where information is always dynamic and unfolding. And I say that I have attempted from the bottom of my heart to do that. And I respect each and every person around this table, whether or not I agree or disagree with their ideas about municipal governance. We should all be able to do this job and to serve our community equitably, without distraction, and with the mutual respect that we deserve as in any workplace. And we should do it with a mutual respect for our differences. And I say that broadly, and I say it narrowly. Our differences of opinion, the differences of our scope of analysis, and with all that we bring to the role, and with all of our background and experiences in life. I encourage others next year to seek this incredible opportunity. That's what elections are about. That's what campaigns are about. And if I ever do this again, and I want to continue to serve this community, I will do it because there's a bar of respect and professionalism that this council and this chamber upholds. That's why I brought this complaint forward, not just for myself, but for the integrity of this work environment and the integrity of the city so that we will not be distracted and we will do the work together that we should be doing. And sometimes things need to be called. The nature of a person can be one thing, but the behavior can be another. And when there's a pattern, there should be a consequence. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lachika. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beamer. Through you, I had not planned to say much tonight unless I had to, and it looks like I have to. Because the mover of the motion, not only within the motion, but the speech that was given to me is a continuation of an effort to try to downplay and minimize what happened. It was evident in the speech tonight, which primarily focused away from the harm that the mayor has caused to us. And it is evident in the report where, despite efforts to recontextualize, to hear things differently, to characterize toxic behavior more mildly, it's in the report and it's clear. And so I just wanted to speak up to say that I feel like there has been an effort to downplay what happened. I want to speak up to say that I stand in solidarity with my town ward partner, Joy Lachika, who's grown to be a friend of mine, who is someone I believe in and who I believe demonstrated great courage to be a woman, a queer woman, in a hallway with 1, 2, 3, 4 men, and in a toxic, violent situation that left her shaken and rattled. And despite how it is framed, there is a continuation of an effect when someone is on the receiving end of that behavior. And what that feels like is that we are in positions that we were elected to be in, and we are having to wear different layers of effort in trying to not say the wrong thing, in trying to get in someone's head and not be our true selves, but be someone who does not receive the brunt of a violent reaction. And so I think it's important to recognize that. Councillor Baldwin, interestingly enough, in 2016, Chair Beamer, was the one who rallied council to adopt a council code of conduct in the first place, and it was voted down. So I believe that he has the ability to understand the importance of not only a code of conduct, but of us abiding by that code of conduct. And lastly, what I'll say is this, is that how it was taught to me to make things right is this: if I go and break a window with a baseball, it's not good enough for me just to apologize for breaking that window, right? I have to go to the property owner and I have to replace the window, and then I have to be in a position where I'm not throwing the baseball in a direction that's going to break the glass. And to me, that is a formula in which a proper amends can be made. I won't speak to the apology that I received at a public meeting because it's in the report. It's in the report from the perspective of the people that complained about it. And it's in the report from the perspective of the integrity commissioner, who was actually waiting to watch the meeting to see what that apology would look like. And to me, a good leader is someone who most definitely makes mistakes, right? But there would have been an avenue for these behaviors to have happened and for the person who did it to make it right. And that hasn't happened. So where are we tonight? We're in a position where council as a whole, which includes me, actually, and it includes Joy Lachika, council as a whole now are the ones that are tasked to come up with an appropriate way to make this situation right. And if you around the table feel that the way to make this situation right is to do nothing, then we don't have much in common.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Reel for a second time.
Through the chair, my colleague cherry picked some things out of the Integrity Commissioner's report, so I would like to do the same thing. The Integrity Commissioner clearly states that the mayor's conduct was unreasonable, unfair, and constituted bullying. The report further notes that the mayor used his position of authority to undermine, belittle, marginalized fellow members of council. This is not just a political disagreement or a clash of personalities. This is about respect for public office and the responsibilities we all carry to conduct ourselves with integrity, professionalism, and accountability. The report highlights specific behaviors: verbal intimidation, dismissive treatment, and emotional manipulation, which fits a classic definition of gaslighting. These actions had the effect of making colleagues question their experience and erode their ability to fully participate in council's business. Moreover, there is a growing concern over the use and misuse of strong mayor powers. What was intended as a tool to ensure municipalities' efficiencies has in case become a vehicle to consolidate authority and silence dissenters. This is not what democratic leadership looks like. These powers were never meant to enable, coerce, or marginalize an elected representative. We must be clear, this kind of conduct has no place in the council chambers, in our city, or in our institutions that purports to represent the public good. It sends a damaging message, not only to us as elected officials, but every resident who expect ethical, fair, and principled leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reel. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Hickey to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to ask if we can separate out 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. I was here at the meeting, but I can't imagine what it was like to be caught in the hallway. My back would go up, definitely. But we talk about consequences. And I don't think, and we've all been, almost all of us have been there, there's no greater consequence to me than public shame. And that's what we have. And the public is very clear about it. I wish I could say I haven't done things that I regret, but I can't because I have, and I'm not belittling any experience that happened to Councillor Chico or Burke. Because again, I think we've all been there. But outside of the public shame, and we wear public shame, and I have before in some votes that I've done, and I've heard about it very simply. The mayor, I've had the luxury of sitting beside him and talking to him a great deal, but he only told me this the other day, he had physical damage done to property of his too. Who did it? Nobody knows. When it was done was during the time of the Bonneworth debate. And a lot of us here, I know, and we are discussing the Bonneworth because it's part of the report. A lot of us here, I know, didn't bring our cars to City Hall because we're concerned about something being done. I don't know by who. I'm not saying by who, because I don't know. But I think the mayor has suffered, and the biggest thing, and I'm going to come back to it, is the public shame that he has, and he is ashamed of it, and to be honest, rightfully so, because it is action that I wouldn't expect from a fellow councillor, and like Councillor Riel said, he leads this council. He's the mayor, so he is held to a different standard. But like I say, I'd like to have 1 and 2 separated out, please.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. We can do that, Madam Clerk, if we could separate 1 and 2. Councillor Burke for a second time.
Just quickly, Chair Beamer, we don't deal in shame or blame. We deal in the business of the city. And we have a code of conduct, and that is meant to be upheld. And we are the arbiter of whether or not that is upheld or not. So to me, if this goes without council, not me, not Joy, if this goes without council reprimanding for the breach of the code of conduct, then we might as well rip up that sheet of paper at the next meeting, because what is it worth? You know, apparently then I'll be able to say whatever I like as long as it's figuratively put. And, you know, so I want to speak to those points. And I also want to speak to, again, the courage of Councillor LaChica for coming forward at the detriment to her emotional safety and how she functions as a councillor to file that report, because if she hadn't have done it, it wouldn't have seen the light of day. And I was there, and what she went through was awful. It was bad. It was bad. And I'm not saying that in a way where I feel like, Jeff, I'm not saying that in the way to belittle the mayor. I don't believe that the mayor is the victim in this case. I believe that what was done happened to her and it happened to me. And I'm not asking that the mayor, I'm not asking for anything outlandish. I'm asking for us to simply uphold our council code of conduct. How egregious the incident was is very well laid out in the report. And so we are setting a precedent tonight by not acting on that. It is going to open, for me, it's going to open the floodgates to say that this council chambers can become the wild, wild west. So I think that's the greater picture that we need to consider as a council, is we have a code of conduct. We are the arbiters to uphold that code of conduct. And I can't imagine a greater case, not from me, not from my words, but from the integrity commissioner, of a breach of that code of conduct. It's clear as day, right? And I just urge everyone to not make this about the personalities of it, but keep it to the principle of what we're discussing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any further? Councillor LaChica, second time.
Thank you. This is a technical concern. I would say that number 2, that the remedial measures referenced in the report be referred to staff for consideration in relation to amendments. The remedial measures that Integrity Commissioner Giorno was citing are in the Municipal Act. So I don't believe that there is, it overrides any changes if there are remedies that are referenced in the Municipal Act.
Commissioner Potts, did you want to comment on that? I thought
through you, Chair. The 90 days, like the remedies that are listed are not remedies that he's concocted for this situation. They are remedies that are standard, and I believe that in my understanding of the Municipal Act, they would have been mentioned in the Municipal Act. No one can be removed, all of those sort of things. And I would like to ask Commissioner Potts if he could concur.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I think, if I may, listening to the discussion, Councillor Hakey made the point about what the process actually is. And that is the only things that are contemplated, and actually the mover of the motion as well. What the Municipal Act contemplates is that if there's a negative finding by an integrity commissioner in a report, then the municipality must make it public. And that's been done. Inclusion on an agenda and the discussion this evening. If a member of council wishes to do so, a member of council, in addition to the penalty of the report being made public, a member of council has a prerogative to make a motion for council to impose either of 2 additional penalties to punish. One is a reprimand, and there's no such thing as different kinds of reprimand. A reprimand is a reprimand. It's a penalty under the Act, or up to 90-day suspension of remuneration. The remedial measures that the report refers to are things that an integrity commissioner might suggest
be undertaken but not imposed. So there's simply suggestions. The integrity commissioner very specifically does not make a recommendation as to the penalties that the act contemplates or councils to decide. Should a member of council wish to impose that additional level of punishment in response to the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Chica?
So supplemental, my point is, when the remedies that are, there were remedies and there were suggestions. So there were sanctions that are municipally determined through the act, and then there were suggestions, as Commissioner Potts has referred to. I think that the way it's phrased in the second point is that it should be referred to staff for consideration in the list of sanctions. And I don't think that is in order. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor LaChica. Any further comments or questions? All right, voting on the amendments, and we'll separate them out.
Chair Beamer, just supplemental. So I just said I'm saying that I don't believe that number 2 is in order.
Okay, I'm gonna.
So what is your ruling?
I'm gonna rule them in order.
I'm gonna challenge the chair.
Okay. So the
Thank you.
challenge, no, that's right. The challenge of chair is always in order. There's no discussion or debate. So we'll have the challenge of the chair on item 2, whether it's in order and should remain in the amendment or if it should be removed. Mr. Clerk, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just have my colleague load a vote for that regarding a challenge to the chair regarding the your ruling that number 2 has been ruled to be in order. And number 2 reads that the remedial measures referenced in the report be referred to staff for consideration in relation to potential amendments to the council code of conduct and the procedure bylaw.
If you can just remind everybody how to vote, because someone always gets this wrong. So what's a yay and what's a nay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have ruled that number 2, which I just read, is in order. Therefore, if a member wishes to support the ruling of the chair, meaning that the item 2 is in order, then they would vote in the affirmative. If they do not concur with that, they would vote in the negative.
All right, we'll take a vote. I ruled it in order, so if you support, yeah, you'll vote yay. If you don't, you'll vote nay. All right, and the chair's ruling is carried. All right, so we'll take a vote on the amendments. A and B will separate out 1 and 2. So moved by Councillor Baldwin, number 1. And that is carried. And we'll take a vote on number 2, moved by Councillor Baldwin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please. Ask you to be respectful like you have been. We appreciate that. Right. And that is carried. All right, so we're back to the main motion, which now includes the amended. So any further comments or questions? We will take a vote. Moved by Councillor Baldwin, we'll take a vote. All right, votes up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that is carried. All right, thanks, everyone. Our next item, Community Reports 13B, Social Services Reserves for Modular Wind Down. Councillor Burke. Yeah, we'll go get the mayor, and the mayor didn't participate or vote, but yeah, we'll just wait for the mayor. All right, thank you, everyone. So folks, we'll just take a 5-minute recess while we will wait for the mayor to come back up, and then we'll reconvene. So we'll take a 5-minute recess. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're back in session, everyone. Thank you very much. Social services reserves for modular wind down. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. Happy to move the report along with my colleague on the file, Councillor Riel. I don't know how that works, but I'm just including him in the conversation. But, you know, I think we've done a pretty good job as councillors talking to the others around the table about what this report is really about. And it's about, you know, the modular bridge housing community has been a success in providing immediate transitional shelter and supporting some of our most vulnerable residents. What's interesting about the modular bridge community is that it's also critical for us securing $6 million a year for 3 years in HART Hub funding. That site is tied, the funding is tied very closely to that site. The HPP funding, which is the funding that funds the program, is provided in 3-year increments and is expected to be renewed at a minimum at the current level as it has been in the past. However, due to the timing of the next funding cycle, which I believe is in March, staff need to prepare for the worst case scenario where that funding is not secured. Council has already determined the future of the site and has committed to the project. This report isn't about changing that plan. What it's about is ensuring that we're ready in the unlikely event that the funding doesn't come through. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Burke. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Riel?
I think that the report speaks for itself and needs to continue so that the 50 of the most hardest to house people are housed. This is an award-winning project that all of us can take pride in. It has not come without naysayers and bumps in the road, but I've been told that the call for services there has been no calls for services for the police, paramedics, and fire in the last 5 months. To date, there are 322 people that are experiencing homelessness. 50 to 70 people are attending in the city as we speak. I had an opportunity on the weekend to speak with MPP Dave Smith, and though he didn't promise that he would, he says, I am surprised by the bridge modular project being so successful. I could see at the time he advocating for funding for this when it's necessary. I'm not saying that he give us the check in the mail, but he certainly said that he could see himself supporting it with his colleagues at Queen's Park.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Riel. Councillor DeGay?
Thank you, Chair Beamer. I'm wondering if I could ask a question of one of the previous speakers.
Yeah, you can through the chair and they can answer or not answer, but you can
Thank you.
ask.
I value the I want to clarify that I completely value the importance of the modular house community. But Councillor Burke, you made a comment. I just want to clarify the council commitment. Is that, I just want if you could explain to me what you mean by that.
Councillor Burke, if you
well, what I might ask for staff support in this, but are you referring to me mentioning how the project continues at that site?
Yes, that's what I think I'm getting at. Thanks, Mr. Burke. Captain Burke, excuse me.
You're welcome. Through the chair, and maybe staff or the clerks can help me out. But I believe it was last November. We were at the point where we had to decide. It was the two-year period of the project, maybe, and council had to decide whether we would continue on because the project had been successful to not put staff through the process of having to look at what was first proposed before we did it, which would mean started at Wolf Street and then maybe potentially move the units somewhere else, spread them across the city. We decided in November not to do that. Maybe through the chair, Commissioner Laidman could expand.
Yep, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Chair Beamer, just to clarify that. So originally there was an end date to that. Council did make the approval that there is no end date on it, that it's approved until such time as there's no longer sufficient funding or there's a greater need for that particular property that the city owns.
Chair Beamer, that, and to Councilor Burke and to Commissioner Lehman, that's a very helpful. I mean, this is a project, this is an important, necessary project. I just wanted to clarify. I recall the discussion, but I needed some input. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Diggy, Councillor Crowley?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. To Commissioner Laidman, I guess. So the funding would be held in escrow, sort of an escrow. We would just be hanging on to funding. And then if provincial funding doesn't come through, then we wind it down using the funding. But if funding does come through the province, then what that money is just freed up and isn't used. Is that sort of like it in a nutshell?
Yeah, through your Chair Beamer, that would be exactly the situation. So right now, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but there was $3.5 million or $2.5 million, I think there is in the reserve. So essentially, if council approves this, there's only $1.5 million in the reserve because we're assuming we've allocated $1 million of it if we need it. So we're assuming and you're exactly right. If the funding comes through, we will no longer have to allocate that funding and the reserve will go back to its full amount as normal.
Good. No, and I appreciate that. And it's an absolutely scary situation to think that the province could pull funding for this site and other similar sites in other municipalities. So this would be a terrible thing for the province to pull funding on this. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Mayor Leo?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I mean, I support the recommendations. I mean, the 50 modular homes now are an integral part of the housing ladder here in Peterborough. And if we didn't have those 50 modular homes, where would those individuals be? Would it be 50 more tents? Would it be 50 more individuals seeking spaces in our shelter system, which are pretty much at capacity? So this is why we need to keep this in place. And I take solace from the remarks from Councillor Riel in terms of his conversations with Mr. Smith. And the reality is without permanent transitional housing, which we don't have at this juncture, we could certainly probably use 50 more modular homes if a location was available to get 50 more people out of tents or shelters, etc. The question is, where would you put them and how would you get them sited? So thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Leo. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Burke. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. 13C, Parks Levy Funds Transfer, Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. I appreciated reading this report because it really addressed some of the things that we're experiencing in our byways and in our streets and not only that, but in our parks and recreation areas. There's been an increase in garbage, and as someone who had moved the motion for the City Litter Action Plan a couple of years ago, the pilot project has really expanded, and we have volunteers that are coordinated. We're seeing things happen with community groups that have been volunteering, and we're seeing some positive change that way. But certainly the infrastructure and something like a truck would help immensely. So thank you for the report, Commissioner Laidman, and it dovetails also with Public Works and getting cleanup happening in all parts of our city. I just was curious though, and through you, Chair Beamer, to Commissioner Laidman, with the truck. Would you be able to speak to whether we have increased staffing to address the increased garbage issue in our parks and recreational areas? The people to drive the truck, and how many people might that be? Would you say, and this to help to inform our thoughts toward the budget going forward, do we have enough staffing to handle the garbage? Thank you.
Through you, Chair Beamer, and thanks for the question. That's an astute observation that this is only one element of solving this overall issue. This is a necessary piece of this, but I don't want to leave council with the misperception that Parks isn't understaffed in some way to address the full issue, and that is going to be a challenge in the budget going forward that we're going to have to address. But this is the first step in that. Certainly, the amount of staffing that we have right now, we'll be able to utilize this truck and the other equipment that we're talking about in a more effective way. But I definitely recognize that we're continue to be challenged to have enough staffing in the parks function.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Laidman. Thanks, Chair Beamer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lachika. Moved by Councillor Lachika. I have Councillor Reel, Burke, and Dahaki. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair, to Commissioner Laidman, I'm not against the purchase of the new garbage truck. My question is why the handoff from Public Works to Arenas, Parks and Rec has not been seamless. It seems that the lines of demarcation when the portfolios were put together are flawed. Even with the old system of Public Works picking up garbage, I've had more calls about this subject since the change. Can you give me some sort of comment on that?
Yes, through you, Chair Beamer. I think certainly it's always a challenge when we're moving functions between divisions. So that is recognized that that's been something that we've needed to overcome. But I wouldn't say that's the underlying issue. The underlying issue is the expansion of the amount of garbage we're seeing across the city, which is documented in the report. And secondarily, I think this issue of being under service was also when Public Works was dealing with it. There's 500 plus receptacles to get around with one truck, and that's a challenge no matter what. But it's the volume as well that's documented in the report that's affecting the operation.
Chair, Mr. Laidman, I'm not questioning that the uptick in the garbage. What I'm talking about is that when Public Works had it, they were able to facilitate using other people and more equipment than you had in Parks and Rec. You're having to buy a vehicle now to facilitate picking up garbage, where maybe Public Works, even though they had the one truck, they were able to facilitate complete Department of Public Works to facilitate picking up the garbage. That's the point that I'm trying to make, is when you hand off, or when it should have been a seamless handoff instead of us having a huge amount of calls about garbage, more so than what I had when Public Works did it. That's the question I have.
Through you, Chair Beamer. Yeah, I recognize that on the face of it, that would seem to be the case, but Public Works still only had the one truck that's suitable for garbage pickup, and they were also challenged with the same items. It just wasn't as public at the time, the volumes that they're dealing with, and I'm fully confident that the efficiencies that have been gained by doing this have been positive overall. We've been able to better utilize arena staff to work on parks in the summer by this change, by working at the marina, which has always been a challenge. We've been able to utilize staff across a complementary way between the summer and the winter seasons that has gained some efficiencies for the city. So while there might be a small challenge with the garbage pickup and this change, I think overall it's been a positive and more efficient way to do business.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reel. I have Councillor Burke, Duguay, Councillor Hakey, and Mayor Leal. Sorry, Councillor Burke. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. And yeah, I mean, I think for me, if the issue is that we are experiencing an expansion of garbage in our parks, which is laid out in the report, then I don't know if this is the most efficient way to address that. Like, even if it is an incremental approach, right? Because we need more than just the truck to combat what we're seeing in the parks. I get it. But as council, I think it would be a better approach to look at from a bird's eye what the steps are in terms of getting to that point where we can react to this better. because I would hate for us to think tonight that by giving the city a new truck, that it's just going to make everything better. There are systemic issues, especially in Town Ward with the parks and the new garbage system, where a lot of residents have been left out of the benefits of that green waste program. And I would argue to say that the uptick in garbage in the parks seamlessly aligns with the changeover in garbage and recycling. And the people that were left out in Town Ward because they don't get the advantage of using a green bin, I think the calls and emails and what I'm seeing walking through our spaces are by way of people being left out of that vision that the rest of the city got to benefit from. And so for me as a councillor, I think a new truck is necessary, sure, but I would hate for us to invest in a new truck, not be able to afford to invest in things to fix the systemic nature of the problem or the staffing issue or other things down the line, and then we have a shiny new truck and we still have the problem. So those are my comments. I think the one question I have, and I was surprised that it wasn't in the report, is that there's no mention of upgrading the infrastructure, like the receptacles in the parks. What I notice is that some parks have a beautiful large recycling paper garbage system that's easy to access. Other parks have those, what looks to me like from the Simpsons, like a toxic oil drum or something with the garbage bag around it. And you know, some parks I walk to their garbage is piling up, overflowing, and other parks seem to be maintained more frequently. So it's fine for us tonight to support the truck with the promise that it's a step in getting to the place where we can deal with the uptick in garbage, but it might be more prudent for us to defer the decision on the truck until we can be presented with what the overall plan looks like. You know, how are we going to implement phase 2 of the green waste program in Town Ward and for commercial tenants to access? Like, to me, it would be interesting to have the truck to be part of that conversation instead of us approving a truck with a substantial cost to it and still being left with the same problem.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, so Chair Beamer, I guess I mean, if anyone else speaks to it, I'll speak again and defer it. I don't think there's support to defer it. If anyone agrees with what I say, you can urge me to defer it or do it yourself. You have that option. But what I want to do is I want to ask Chair Beamer, please, through you to
Councilor Burke has the floor.
Thank you. Through you to Commissioner Laidman, if you could just follow up on my comment about the receptacles, why that wasn't included in this step, and if there's plans to do that and what the cost would be, and then maybe if you could speak to the cost of what the kind of end game is here, that would be great.
All right, we have Commissioner Laidman and CEO Elena. Commissioner Laidman?
Actually, if I could, Mr. McCauley's on the call on Teams tonight, and I know he might be better able to answer Councillor Burke's question about the receptacles here, if I could turn it over to him.
All right, Director McCauley, welcome.
Good evening, Council, and through the chair to Councillor Burke. So your point, Councillor, is absolutely correct. There is a larger conversation to occur. Outside of just infrastructure, equipment obviously is a high priority, but there's also the discussion around park standards, how often we cut our parks, how often we address our fields, what is the sustainability of our current processes. So I think what you're speaking to is a longer term plan regarding park maintenance and park maintenance standards. I will say that we are in a critical need at this point of the garbage truck. That's why it was identified. The current truck was offline 2 weeks ago, which resulted in a week of delay in garbage around the city. As we enter the peak of the season, even a couple-day delay will result in the same concerns and issues that we saw last year. So I think we are identifying critical needs at this point in order to achieve at least stability within our system, then to address a further plan as you're speaking to.
Yep, thank you. Councilor Burke, follow up?
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to follow up, Chair, to Mr. McCauley. Appreciate the insight. I think you make a good case for why a truck maybe is necessary. I have two questions. One, the first question would be, question. So, okay, I'll go this route then. So a lot of council colleagues that I'm talking to are supportive of this motion because they believe that it will make a difference in making the situation better with the uptick in garbage and the calls and complaints that we're getting. They believe that this is part of the solution to that. So through the chair to Mr. McCauley, are we as councillors who are connected to our communities, are we going to feel the impact of this truck in remedying the situation of the uptick in garbage and the dissatisfaction by people that are using the parks? Are we going to feel the impact of this truck in that regard?
Through the chair to Councillor Burke, yes, that's the short answer. I think where we're at is every time that truck has a maintenance issue, a shutdown, or a delay in an oil change, we're not out picking up garbage at that time. Even with a second truck, we'd at least have two trucks servicing the garbage receptacles across the city. I think it's important to realize that given the amount of receptacles we have, we're currently only running service between 7 and 3 and 7 to 7 on the weekends. This would allow two vehicles to be essentially doing that at the same time. And in our worst case scenario, at least one vehicle on the road at all times during the shifts.
Thanks. And then just a final
quickly.
Yeah. So if the truck is the issue, when staff was looking into this, was there any discussion internally about how to use our existing resources from other divisions and other vehicles that we own to help make up for the issues that we're having with the current truck?
So to the chair to Councillor Burke, we currently utilize our other pickup trucks to service the garbage when possible. However, that requires a greater amount of staff resources. The garbage truck is designed to go and automate through the pickup versus I don't have a better word to use, hand bombing into the back of a pickup truck at this point. So it's not as efficient as having a second truck on the road.
Thank you. Would you like to go back on the list, Councillor Burke? You okay? So before we get to Councillor Duguay Reyna, you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to respectfully remind whole council that everything will be covered as per the service delivery efficiency and effectiveness is concerned, which we have talked about previously during the orientation session, that there will be a detailed grassroots level service delivery review happening next year. So we'll be bringing a detailed report to the council with a lot of recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, CEO Reyna. Councillor Duguay.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. I support this staff recommendation. I've had occasion to visit several parks, and this is a problem regard. It's not ward specific. It's certainly pronounced in some of the town ward parks, but it's everywhere. I think the report is self-explanatory, and it will serve to alleviate, perhaps not completely, but certainly go a long way to alleviate of unwelcomed and inappropriate use of our garbage containers along our trails. I certainly support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. Councillor Hickey, Mayor Leal, Councillor Crowley Parnell. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To Councillor Burke's point, I certainly support a deferral if we can get people to defer putting the garbage out. That's the problem that we're going to have. But question for Mr. Laidman or Mr. McCauley. The $5,000 for the truck, is it electric, hybrid, or sorry, the $500,000? I was thinking of a car I wanted. Electric, gas, hybrid.
Through the chair to Councillor Hickey, we haven't begun the procurement process at this time. That estimate was based on the purchase of a truck back in 2021, I believe, with some projected cost increases.
Wait, sorry, I didn't hear the last part, Rob.
With projected increases to cost.
Okay, and that was, at that time, was that a diesel or gas powered
It was gas at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Hickey. Mayor Leal.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I think the answer to all our questions is in the report. I mean, we desperately need this truck. I mean, this division has been so underinvestment for such a long period of time. No wonder we got problems today. I mean, you know, we're talking about using equipment here in the report that's 55 years old, 1970s. So what do you expect? I mean, I got a 2014 Grand Caravan at home. It's 11 years old. I know what it's starting to cost now to keep it on the road. So stuff that's 55 years old is antiquated. But the other answer to our question is right in the report, page 5. The town of Whitby services a similar number of receptacles from over 100 parks, 10 fewer than Peterborough. They have 4 garbage trucks. 3 of those trucks are used daily, and what is a dedicated spare? There's an answer to your question. And on page 4, where are we getting a lot of our garbage from? Sadly, it's from encampments. That's a big issue. So we have to pick all that garbage up. And my question to maybe Ilmar is, I know, Ilmar, we have a private entity out there that's kind of interested in this, and I know you've followed up with that through Mr. Chair. Is there any more news on that front? He was a business guy that wanted to improve the general appearance of Peterborough.
Through Mr. Chair, we did have a conversation with him, and we did include parks. Rob was part of that call, so we are looking for opportunities to bring him to the table and see what we can do with his initiative, and so hopefully some funding. Yes.
And Mr. Chair, I'll finish. I'll go back to my hobby horse before, hiring a few extra summer students. We'll put them in those 1970 pickup trucks, and they can help us augment our pickup. 5 days a week, we send them into each ward, and they would augment part of that pickup and make the city of Peterborough clean.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Leal. Councillor Crowley.
Sorry, my question, Mr. Chair, has been asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to speak to this because it is part of my portfolio, and I wanted to thank Director McCauley and Commissioner Laidman for putting together this report. It's very, very important information in here, and a lot of the waste is illegally accumulated. It's illegally dumped by people who are not respecting anybody, by dumping illegally on our trails and our parks. Not participating in what actually has been, for the most part, a very successful organic program. This, unfortunately, is a consequence of not being able to do 100%, which is always the most difficult part, that last little bit. But when you look at what the time, the operator has 5 minutes per receptacle to deal with it in their day, 5 minutes. And that does not include the vehicle inspection and maintenance or travel time between receptacles or parks or the landfill. So those men and women in this department are really booting it every day to do the very best they can. And sometimes they have to go to the same park more than once a day because of some of the activity. There's no way we can defer this. We've been trying to get this to the table for some time now. The lead time for new trucks is quite long, and we will need more as we grow anyway. So we can't defer it. We must go ahead and get this truck ordered. And again, still look at the bigger picture, knowing that this is one part of the puzzle as we move forward. And some of the garbage actually is generated by community groups doing fantastic work for volunteers out there. Numerous events cleaning up parks and trails. It's been fantastic. But then that is also a pile of garbage where we're calling in saying, hey guys, we got another pile of garbage that our wonderful volunteers cleaned up. That's in addition to what the people are already picking up every day. So I will support it. And probably, anyway, I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purnell, for that. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Degay. Second time?
I didn't know if it had been moved yet, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Thank
Councillor
you.
LaChica moved it, so.
Thank you, Councillor Chica. Then I'm done.
Okay, we'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. 13E, designation of 1310 Albertus. Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Nelson. Blair, can you tell me if the owner of this property is okay with this designation? I understand that we're not obligated to call them, but I sure think it's a good idea that we do. So
Through you, Chair Beamer, I'll start an initial, and then I'll maybe defer to Director Appleby or Mr. Walsh to supplement. City staff have reached out, made all the applicants that are going to be designated in a couple cases, and I know staff have specifically also offered to meet with the owners of the property. But again, I'll defer to Director Appleby to maybe supplement.
Mr. Chair, we did actually meet with this property owner one-on-one. We had a great conversation with her. She didn't express any explicit opposition to the designation. She did have some questions. She did have some comments around sort of what the sort of what type of incentive might come along with a designation for the property, which of course there isn't an automatic sort of incentive that comes along with it, but there are programs or a program that we have available that folks could apply for if there's budget available. But in this particular case, I think she's sort of reserving the right to make her judgment. But when we met with her, it wasn't sort of an explicit opposition.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So my only comment would be, in the absence of a yes, I would take it as a no for myself.
Okay. I do need a mover first. Could someone? You're moving it, are you? Okay, moved by Councillor Hakey. Councillor Parnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to follow up on my colleague, to Director Appleby, my understanding of this applicant, and I did reach out to her myself. I didn't get a call back, unfortunately, but my understanding is that what I have been told is that her support of designation of her property hinges on her being able to get the tax deduction that goes with heritage designation. However, that program is oversubscribed and there's a long waiting list. So to me, that's her condition and we can't meet it. And through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Appleby, did I understand that correctly, sir?
Through the chair, I don't think she quite phrased it that way, but she did raise sort of that expectation that if a designation, you know, is placed on a property, it should come with an incentive to keep it that way, like the tax relief program. But again, at the time when my colleague here and I met with her, she did not sort of come out and state that she was opposed to designation, but she did feel like the incentive should come along with the designation.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Parnell. I have Councillor Burke and Mayor Lil. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, this is maybe the third time that I'm speaking where I didn't plan to speak, but I would urge my council colleagues to visit that site. You would never expect that it would be there. It is one of the most beautiful old buildings in the city. It's magical. The entryway is around the back. It used to be the old hospital, and it's interesting to think of it in context to the new hospital. It's just, to me, it just represents one of those sort of hidden, magical, beautiful remnants of our history. The inside is great, and I think it's an example of a building, a large building like that, that's been reused well. I believe that it's apartments now. And I definitely got to see more of it when I was door knocking. And I'll always remember that experience of being able to sort of through the door knocking experience, like walk through that site. And it's definitely something, as someone who's born and raised here and lives here, that I value. I tend to take Mr. Appleby's comments differently than the previous speaker. I tend to think that at this stage of the process, it seems like the homeowner is not against this process moving forward, and for those reasons, I'll support it.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Burke. Mayor Leo?
Thanks, Chair Bieber. And I don't think we have anybody from our finance division here, but maybe someone could help me. Maybe Mr. Wedley, maybe, or my question is simply this, and maybe Mr. Wedley has a CA and could help me out here. So my question is, what's the quantum in our tax support program in 2025 and how many individuals did we support with the quantum that was available in 2025? And if we don't have it this evening, I'd be prepared to, next week would be just fine.
Thank you. Through the chair, as expected, I don't have that information on hand, but I will endeavor to get that for you.
Perfect.
Thanks, Mr. Wedley. Mr. Appleby?
Mr. Chair, I believe the total number of properties right now involved in the program is about 69. And I think on an annual basis, that comes out to somewhere around $275,000, maybe a little more, a little less.
If I could just continue, how do we grow it every year, or is that a capped amount? And just to follow up, Councillor Purnell, how many people do we have in the queue that would like to receive tax support?
Commissioner Nelson?
Through you, Chair Beamer, Mayor Leal. Currently, that is part of the issue. We have not been incrementing to cost of living. So as a result, tax values have been increasing through regular tax increases, and that's left the program undersubscribed, or underfunded, I should say. It's oversubscribed, underfunded. Currently, I apologize, I don't know what the list is of pending properties that are wanting onto it, but we do know currently that it is underfunded just from budget pressures.
I find it interesting, it was the old Nichols Hospital that was commonly referred to as the Protestant hospital, and then we had to have Senator Frank O'Connor come around to build St. Joseph to provide an alternative hospital. Just a little historical fact there, Mr. Chair.
That's good. Thank you, Mayor Leal. Councillor Duguay?
Thank you, Chair Beamer. In light of any tangible opposition present from the property owner, I would be prepared to support the designation. My understanding that this is a recommendation of General Committee to Council. Council has the final say. I'm assuming that staff would make the property owner aware of this evening's recommendation in the event that the property wishes to speak, they could address council. But I'm in the absence of a tangible opposition, I would be prepared to support the designation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duguay. Any further comments? All right. We will take a vote. Moved by Councillor Hakey. And that is carried. All right. 13F, designation of Hunter Street West and Water Street, the Commerce Building. Councillor Burke has the pecuniary. Councillor LaChica.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. If I could eventually move this motion, that would be great. I just wanted to just highlight the fact that there is something from the Heritage Preservation Office that will speak to part of the issue that has arisen around insurance and whether insurance rates would be increased to a heritage property owner seeking to be insured after designation. That question's come up, and I've done a little bit of research. We did meet in our pre-IPG meeting to talk about some of these items, and since that meeting, I just wanted to share that that the Ministry of Heritage on their website clarifies what is in this same letter that's specific to our city. But you know whether or not a fire or an accident would increase the cost of insurance if there was damage and it needed to be rebuilt. And that is the culprit here. And I think that there are some insurance companies, and from what I've read here, that may have that may believe that, but it isn't so based on the Ministry of Heritage. And if I could just quote that if a building on a heritage property is completely or partially destroyed, the designation bylaw does not require the owner to replicate any lost heritage attributes. A replacement building can be of a different design. So the point is we can't replicate something that has been destroyed because it was heritage
prior to being destroyed. And that there certainly is an expectation, according to the Ministry of Heritage, for that to be expected. So it wouldn't, the point being, it would not increase the rate of insurance for a heritage property owner. And also National Trust Canada said the following on the same point. Sometimes uninformed insurance companies equate designation with increased replacement costs, as they may be under the false belief that listing or designation under the Act requires that a structure or heritage attributes be replicated. So this kind of debunks that piece as we think through the insurance factor, because I know that that's an important one to a particular owner. So my point is just that, and that the final thing is that premiums may increase for older buildings if there are things like outdated wiring, old heating systems, things that are not up to code. That might mean there is difficulty in insuring that building, not because of the designation factor. So that was part of the ministry piece on the website as well around insurance. So just to distinguish the two things, and I think there was a discussion about perhaps deferral and could be in order, but with this information, I think a deferral may not be the best choice, because a deferral may mean that this may not come back, because we know we're on a very strict timeline. So my motion is to move forward knowing that there's clarity on insurance based on the Heritage Act, based on the City of Peterborough stance, and I just wanted to put that out to the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chika. So moved by Councillor Chika. I have Councillor Crowley and Hickey. Councillor Crowley.
I'm probably going to ask the question that Councillor Hickey was going to ask, but through you, Chair, to Mr. Appleby, what's the owner's perspective on this heritage designation?
Through the chair, the owner has expressed sort of his own personal belief in preserving heritage through the work that he does. But with respect to designating this particular building, he is concerned with the designation because he believes it will cause his insurance to go up and it'll make it sort of no longer feasible to insure that building.
Understand. I know that the previous speaker made some fantastic points, Chair, regarding insurance. I do have a friend, a close personal friend, who lives in a heritage property in town, who recently had to change insurance companies because his insurance went through the roof and he had to find a new insurance company to handle the property. No, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chika, second time.
Thanks for that point to the previous speaker, through you, Chair Beamer. I happen to live in a designated house. The insurance is not more. I think that because there are insurance companies that have a certain, consideration of the age of the building and perhaps slightly out of code issues, that it might be a good point to assess which insurer. And, for those of us who may have bought and sold houses before, sometimes shopping for insurance is something that needs to be done. So, but as a rule, and what the ministry says is that there is not, that risk of concern that fire damage would require a premium to be higher for an insurance company. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chika. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear, Mr. Appleby, did he say no to the designation? Did Mr. Bennett say no?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, and I get Councillor Lachika's point, but actually probably the person I trust last is the ministry telling me anything that's what's going to happen. And I know it's counter, but it's government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hickey. Any further comments or questions? All right, we'll take a vote. Moved by Councillor Chika. And that is lost, and we'll note that Councillor Burke did not participate or vote. All right, and our last item of the evening, 13G, designation of Walker Field. Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Question through to either commissioner or director. Has the owner of the house said yes or no to the designation going on the property?
Mr. Chair, I think I'm going to allow my colleague, Mr. Walsh, to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the owners of this property have been notified that this process is going on and of the meetings tonight and next week as well, and they have acknowledged receipt of this notice and they have not voiced a yes or a no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate, by the way, everybody here that's being proactive and calling the people beforehand, because I understand you don't have to, but I think that that's a great outreach for the citizens. But I'll take that as a no. Thank you.
Are you comfortable moving it just for discussion? Thanks, Councillor Hakey. Councillor Purnell and then Burke. Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Councillor Hakey had moved it, I would have moved this particular report. I did reach out to the husband and wife who own this particular property to ask them if they had been in receipt and did they have any concerns, were they in favor or not, and they are wholeheartedly in favor. They acknowledged that they did in this case receive the notice, and they understand everything about the designation. So I have no problem voting in favor of this one because the property owners are very much in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Purnell. Councillor Burke.
Just quickly speaking to the heritage, our city, and especially from outsiders, my friends from Toronto that come here, I think they're really fascinated by our connection to mid-century modern design. This is a Zeidler design property, and I think it's pretty unique within the types of properties that we usually look at. There's a bunch of beautiful Zeidler houses in the north end, I know, as well as some bigger buildings downtown. And I just wanted to add that. I think that it's really interesting to look at the connection to the mid-century modern movement and how it's represented here in Peterborough, and what can we do to help preserve that. I actually knew I don't know if they still live there, but I knew a friend of mine growing up lived in that house. I don't know if that's a conflict. I don't think it is.
No, we're good, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Burke. Councillor DeGay.
Mr. Chairman, this evening we've had opportunity as a council to discuss 3 applications. This is important, but what I'm particularly encouraged by, Director Appleby, Commissioner Nelson, Mr. Welsh, that we've reached out to property owners. We're communicating with them, and that was a fundamental challenge in the past, that we would have almost confrontational moments in these chambers where an owner is saying, I didn't know, I wasn't aware, and I don't support it. But we're having fulsome discussion, and there still is an opportunity for property agree just to speak to council. But I think this is very encouraging on a go-forward basis. So thank you, staff, for that initiative.
Thank you very much, Councillor DeGay. Councillor Purnell, a second time.
Sorry, just to follow up, as part of the conversation, there has been problems in the past with notices being sent out and not being received or acknowledged. I mean, it happened to a couple of councillors where something was sent out for us and we didn't even get them, right? So going forward, I'm not going to do it this evening. I'm just letting people know I'm going to work with the clerk's office to bring forward a motion that these properties that we are recommending for designation for a meeting, whatever that resolution was, that they go out by registered mail requiring a signature so we can prove that the owner of the property has actually been notified. I think that would be a good box to tick in this instance. So that will be coming forward, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
No, very good. Thank you, Councillor Purnell. All right, moved by Councillor Hakey. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. So we do have some new business this evening. We have Mayor Leal, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Burke. Mayor Leal, other business?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Stephen Kiley and Michael Vander Herberg from the Mount Community Center. They share with me and staff their plans to purchase the old Bible College property on 780 Argyle Street for affordable and community housing. They were asking us what support might be available from the city of Peterborough and other levels of government. So we had a very productive conversation. So I'll move the following motion, that staff be directed to explore options, including grants and financing for the municipality to support the Mount Community Center's acquisition of the property at 780 Argyle Street for the provision of affordable housing, and report back to council at the general committee meeting on August 5th, 2025.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leal. Councillor Duguay?
Chair Beamer, at its onset, I must declare an interest. A family member co-owns the planning company providing planning services on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions to the motion in front of us? Councillor Burke?
So just my understanding of it is that we're not committing to anything. We're just hearing about, we're going to hear at a later date what they need and what we're willing to offer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, what we can offer.
Yeah, I support it. Thank you.
If anything. Okay, we'll take a vote. And that is carried, I think. Yep, that is carried. That is carried. Thanks, Mayor Leal. Councillor Crowley, other business?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was advised by the clerk's office that the June 23rd General Committee agenda is supposed to be rather full. So I'm submitting the following motion. Whereas the June 23rd, 2025 General Committee agenda is anticipated to be lengthy, be it resolved that the meeting of General Committee start at 3 p.m. on June 23rd, 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Comments or questions? And most importantly, can everyone make that work? No? Okay, we'll take a vote. I think it's, is that correct, Mr. Clerk? I think it's supposed to be AM.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The intent is that it would be at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll vote on that, but it's just, to be clear, it's 3 p.m. Yeah, we'll go with 3 p.m. 3. It means 3. It is. So 3 p.m. Councillor, are you all right with voting for that, or? Oh, I think we're just doing it verbally. So I think it's, do you want to do it? All right, Madam Clerk, can you redo that with 3 p.m., the correct number? So we'll redo it with the correct 3 p.m., which is probably the correct thing to do. We'll get the agenda then. Okay, so thanks everyone, and for those watching for your patience. 3 p.m. Thank you, Councillor Real. Oh, no, good to have it. Good to have it correct. Councillor Purnell, we're just waiting for your vote. We'll get out of here by midnight. All right, thanks everyone. Other business, Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. I'll read the motion and then just speak to it briefly. The motion is that a staff report come back to council in the next 90 days with a comprehensive breakdown of all costs associated with the enforcement strategy to clear the city's parks and spaces of encampments the week of May 27th, including but not limited to staff time, temporary shelter at the Morrow Building, Public Works, bylaw enforcement, and any other related expenses.
So before you speak, can I just grab that paper for the? Oh, did you? Okay, thanks, Councillor Burke. You have the floor.
Yeah, and I think that being on council can be a social game and it can be political. And I'd just like to emphasize that this is none of those things. This is coming from a place where Councillor Riel and I are deeply committed to finding solutions for the homelessness issue in our city. Councillor Riel and I have lived through the various ways in which we've tried to enforce our parks bylaw. Most recently, where we went in with an enforcement strategy and we experienced that it didn't do much in terms of being effective if the outcome wanted by council is to clear the parks of tents, because we noticed that tents were back up the very next day. And again, I'm not saying any of this to be critical of any staff member or any approach, but when we're talking about homelessness solutions, which is the table that him and I are at, we're at that table trying to find solutions. We can't look at that. We can't look at that very well if we don't really understand the current cost attached to our current approach. And when we're looking at the approach, we look at two things: is it effective, and how much? And to know whether it's effective, I think it's important for us as council, whether it be an open or closed, to understand the cost behind that approach. And so I'm simply just asking for a staff report. It was a motion that I had written out, and I decided to do another business because I'll leave it where it is. And I'll leave it where it is. I hope that we find support in receiving this information. There's no prejudice. It's just I think that it will benefit council as a whole to understand the cost associated to these enforcement approaches, and that's why I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Burke. And the motion's on the screen for everybody to read. Speakers to that motion, Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's something I support because I've been asked by the public countless times, how much are we spending cleaning up, kicking out, moving, doing whatever. But I do have and I don't know if you can answer this question, but where do they keep getting the tents from? Seriously, who provides the tents? Oh, okay, so they're buying them. Okay, I do support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Okay, moved by Councillor Burke. We'll take a vote. That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Any additional other business? Just two things for the community. Just a friendly reminder, we'll have a general committee for the preliminary 2026 budget information session on Tuesday, June 10th. That starts at 9 a.m. in council chambers. And we will have a budget engagement session Thursday, June 19th at 6:30 at Healthy Planet Arena Banquet. So with that, we'll motion to adjourn. Councillor Carley will take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, staff. Have a great week.